I have I chose to save some money on a pair of pants at Old Navy. They were like $20 or something. So I was like, yeah, why not? They don't have 34 length. That's fine. I'll just get 32 and wear high tops. Most of my shoes are high tops anyway.
Sure. That's Joseph's strategy. He's like, I don't need longer pants. I'll just wear longer socks.
Sometimes it works. Sometimes you forget. And then sometimes, like, no matter how high your shoes are, it still looks like your pants are too short.
Looks like you're wearing capris or whatever.
Yeah. Also, today I couldn't, all my high top Converse are very bright colors. I'm like, well, none of these, I don't have any blues or pinks. So I just wore my boots, and this just looks ridiculous in this summer heat. So I don't know what I'm doing.
So do pants, in my opinion. But
no,
no,
you
pull it off somehow.
So yeah, I need to just make sure I buy clothing that's my size.
That's your size. Yes.
I'm glad that I have a friend in Joseph who knows the struggles.
Oh, he does.
Well, and he's still growing too.
You skinny, lanky guys.
Yeah, at least I have fewer excuses than he does because I've maintained the same height for a while, so I know what I'm getting into. He's just kind of like waiting it out until he can achieve consistency. And
yeah, I mean, he's still growing. But
yeah,
his waist isn't growing very much.
Yeah,
he's got Rachel's genes on that. If it was me, I think at his age I was wearing a size 38 waist.
That's a waist,
which is not far off from what I wear now.
Well, consistency.
All right. You ready?
Yeah.
Got to get there.
There.
Okay. Let's do it. Welcome, everybody, to episode number 141 of the Goulet Pen Cast. I can't believe it's that high already. Where fountain pens are still a thing. Of course, I'm Brian Goulet.
I'm Drew Brown.
And we're here from Goulet Pens to deliver this casual and informal, tangential and extraneous, superfluous and extemporaneous fountain pen show, where we talk about what's going on at the Goulet Pen Company and in our fountain pen lives. In today's show, we're going to have a fairly ink-heavy episode, so I hope it flows well.
Oh!
That was really bad.
That's good. No, I appreciate that one.
Yeah, it was forced. Anyway, we're going to be talking about quite a bit of new stuff, actually. We have some new things on the horizon. If pigmented and shimmer ink are equally cloggy, if saturated inks can still have some shading, our favorite black and dark green inks, favorite inks for flow, not just color, and then securing the metal barrel on pens that just keep coming unscrewed while writing with them. And then we're going to be spotlighting a new brand, SCRIBO pens. New to us. Not new to the world, but new to Goulet. Yeah, we'll be doing that. So I guess we'll start it off with some feedback.
All right. We had a lot of great feedback from last episode. Again, we've covered the don't judge yourself by your handwriting thing, but Kathy Carr mentioned in the comments something that I just had to share. So I wanted to, give this some spotlight. Kathy says, just a comment about handwriting. Every person has handwriting unique to them. I have a sample of my mother's handwriting that I have kept for over 20 years since she passed away. It was just a quick note that meant nothing, but it was a part of her. Let your handwriting be unique to you. Don't strive to write like someone else.
That's cool.
How fantastic is that?
That's great. Yeah.
So no matter what you think your handwriting may look good or bad, it is still yours. Mm-hmm. And anybody who comes across it later, your handwriting very well may outlive you, and it's going to be more a part of you. Just the more unique it is, supposedly good or bad, the more you it is. So just you be you. And Kathy encouraged us all to be that. And I appreciate that comment. It was a very upvoted comment too. So
That's cool.
Yeah, a lot of people definitely agreed with Kathy there. All right, Murata 2020 says, great video. I loved Drew's passion for the edits that he would make to an existing pen. Thank you. I tend to not be low on passion. I am either extraordinarily opinionated or completely ambivalent. I don't often kind of fall in between.
Yeah.
So for better or for worse, yeah, that's me. Stacy Schultz also commented on some of my edits and pen invention comments. Drew, I'm too much of a classics nerd to allow you to pair the wrong god with lava/fire because I thought that the Visconti Mirage Mythos would look great in a lava resin, which could be the Hades god because they've done Zeus, Aphrodite, Apollo, etc. But Stacy is reminding me that I should be invoking Hephaestus, or in Roman, it would be Vulcan. Hephaestus is the blacksmithing god, the god of, like, he had a forge, and, for a God of War video game nerd like me, he, created some good weapons for your main character there. But he lives, in this forge with lava and stuff. So yeah, it makes total sense for it to be Hephaestus. Hades is mainly, there's not like Hades is not living in an environment that's very like lava and fiery. Like that in Greek mythology is usually just kind of like dark and cold and that sort of vibe. So yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, that was, yeah. But I completely agree. In fact, someone else mentioned, in addition to Stacy's comment here, that I did not know this. Allegedly, part of the myth of, Greek mythology is that due to an argument between Hephaestus and Zeus, Hephaestus was ejected, cast out of Mount Olympus, and he landed in a particular volcano, or what later became a volcano, where he set up a new forge. Any idea which volcano that might have been?
Would that happen to be Mount Etna
in
Italy?
Is Mount Etna in Italy?
Well, that's really fitting then.
Right?
Okay.
So I might have already emailed somebody about that idea, because I just got so excited. I was like, come on. Like I said,
that
I know
is very fitting.
Well, I said, I know this probably can't happen, because I doubt you can just take the volcanic resin from the Homo sapiens and just squirt it into the mold of the mythos. But what if?
I don't think it works
but
like that.
What if, So anyway, thank you all for that. That was brilliant. Yes, I completely agree. And then finally, Cowboy Like Me said this, and this is also new information for me. Saying that the Taylor Swift fountain pen was unexpected is so funny to me. She breaks her songs up into 3 categories: glitter pen, fountain pen, and quill pen songs, depending on the writing complexity and romanticism of each song. The fans have been asking for a fountain pen for years. Considering her new album was mostly fountain pen songs, fitting in the fountain pen song category,
right.
It was fitting that she finally dropped the pen. So how about that? I mean, to us, it was unexpected.
Yes, because we're not
apparently
Swifties.
If you're in the know and you follow her why behind her songwriting, then it made perfect sense. So I found that to be quite fascinating.
That is very fascinating.
So thank you for that. That was very educational.
Now I want to know, is she actually writing songs out with a quill? Because that would be impressive.
I doubt that.
I imagine it's more of a metaphorical quill, as opposed to
I'm guessing glitter pen songs are like lighthearted and goofy, and fountain pen somewhere in the middle, and then quill is like 70 years ago.
It's like we're taking our time on this one.
Yeah. Okay. Good stuff.
Very cool. I did not know any of that. So the more you know.
Yeah, all we do here is just like say a bunch of random stuff so that we can then learn from you. That's the whole thing.
Yes, that is helpful, actually. We do sometimes bring up things being like, I don't know the answer to this, but somebody will. Okay, let's see. I got some from Nerd Artastic. Finally, Brian playing the sax. You sound so great. Well, thank you very much. That was just like recorded with a phone. I didn't even record that stuff. That was like candid stuff that Rachel had recorded and her sister and stuff when we were on vacation. So I do plan on more intentionally showing my playing at some point, not from like super far away or whatever, but thank you very much for the compliments. I have been practicing quite a bit. So let's see here. Jamie Loom 22 says, love the scene of, there's another sax one. Love the scene of Brian playing his sax in such a beautiful landscape. Congrats on hitting your goal. Yeah, I thought that setting was just so cool.
And you didn't even tell us in the last episode that you were going to include that footage.
No, I didn't, because I didn't know if I had that footage. Again, I didn't like intentionally play to record anything, but we had like a shared family album. And then once I was kind of going back through the pictures of all the stuff that people had uploaded, I saw that there was some footage. I was like, oh, this is kind of showing exactly what I was describing.
I couldn't believe how loud it was. Like you were so far away.
I know.
And it was like crystal clear.
Yeah. It was like I was like standing right there.
That was insane.
And I wasn't playing super loud either. It's just like, I don't know, the way it carried on the water or something.
It was even more scenic than you described it.
Yeah,
like
it was.
That was, what an environment.
Yeah.
And I was like, what is everybody talking about? And I had to go back and watch the Pencast. Like, whoa, what?
Yeah, it was pretty wild.
He's doing it.
Yeah, it was cool.
And I had to put 2 comments in here because so many people said similar things. So I wanted at least to have 2 because there was an overwhelming amount of congratulations and appreciation for you sharing it. And just, everybody knows how long you practice and everything like that. So
I appreciate
a lot of really, really kind comments out there.
Well, I appreciate that very much. So Francisco Lopez. Francisco Lopez. Okay, there we go.
Hey, Francisco.
There's a kid out of Detroit, high school age, but he's a pen maker, Motor City Pens. He makes pens out of a resin that changes color with heat, turquoise to fuchsia, etc. He'll be at the DC Pen Show. He was there last year. Motor City Pens. It sounds very familiar. I'm pretty sure I met him last year at DC.
Because we talked about color-changing pens. I mentioned hypercolor pens, and you mentioned mood ring pens.
I don't remember seeing this pen, though.
I don't.
So I wonder if this is like a new thing that's happened in the last year. Okay.
Francisco is from Heinz Pen, so he would definitely know.
Okay. Yes. That's where I'm making that connection. Okay. Well, we'll definitely have to check that out.
Yeah,
then.
Thank you, Francisco.
Very cool. Okay. Michelle Russell, 3494, says, I just tried a prototype pen at the St. Louis Pen Show with a diamond-tipped nib. It was the best writing experience I've had. So the technology is out there. Where is all this stuff that we're just hearing about?
At pen shows, man.
Wow. Okay.
It's wild.
This must be like one-off, like prototype things.
Maybe.
You know?
I think someone else mentioned that they saw a nib that was made of some other super hard material. It might have been like some sort of sapphire or something, like what they make like watch crystals out of.
Okay.
I don't know. There are definitely people making experiments out there.
Okay. Well then, that is cool. I had not heard about that. So
I also got an amazing DM from a friend of mine who listened, and in my response to an ink agitator for a pen for shimmer inks, he sent me a video of a kid's little bubble water toy that you like squeeze thing and try to get the little hoops on the pegs.
I remember those things.
And I was like, that's such a simple way to agitate your ink, just like a little bladder that you just kind of squirt. The only downside is like, what's to stop it from like squirting out of the nib?
That's the thing.
Yeah.
Those little games are like a sealed system.
Completely sealed. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're squirting it, it's going to shoot it right out of the pen.
You'd need to find, I don't know. But
you would have to have it like a vac filling pen that like locks off the chamber. Then you could do it, but then it's also not getting down into the pen.
And it's more work. Like you might as well just twist it around,
Yeah.
But I thought that was really funny and, a very clever idea.
That is fun.
And I love that like people are listening to the Pencast and then going about and in their everyday lives and be like, aha! Picks up his kid's toys like this is it.
Oh my gosh. Yes. All those toys that we had before we had like devices in our hands.
I'm glad they're still out there.
They are like new? Are they still being made? I guess in some capacity.
It didn't look like an antique, but
okay.
I don't know.
I remember that being more of a thing when we were kids. I don't think my kids have ever even seen one of those things.
That's a good point. I don't know.
Okay, last one we got is KSEC says, officially predicting next week's Turkey Hammock fun fact will be about how mood rings work.
That did stump us last time.
That is a really good idea. That isn't what I prepared so far. I also realized after we recorded that I totally was going to come back to something.
That's right.
And then I completely forgot about it.
Yeah.
And now I'm remembering that I forgot it, but I don't remember what it was that I forgot.
Yep.
Oh my gosh.
This is how it is.
What was I referring to? I don't remember. Dang it. And I didn't remember that I had forgotten it until just now. Like had I remembered it when I was prepping for this, I would have then put something in here to try to get me to re-remember it. But now all I'm re-remembering is the fact that I forgot it.
Nice.
Which is not helpful to anybody. No. This is how, I don't know about you.
Yes.
I'm sure this is how
Oh, yes.
This is how me and Drew's brain works sometimes. Yes. It's like, oh, yeah, that's right. I remember this thing. I don't remember what it was. Like Joseph asked us like last week or something, maybe 2 weeks ago. He said, I don't really remember. No, what did he say? He said, is it still a memory? How did he phrase it? Because it was really funny. He was talking about remembering something. He was like, is it still a memory if you don't remember what it was or something like that? Like he remembers the memory, but doesn't remember what it was he was supposed to remember. And I'm like, I don't really know, but that is kind of how
it works. It's a memory of a memory.
It works in my head a lot of the time. I'm literally having that right now.
It's very familiar.
Anyway, we'll see if it pops in my head what it was I was going to bring up, but I really don't remember. Anyway, so we'll see. We'll see if I end up getting on the keyboard for mood rings. But for right now, we're going to move on to new stuff. All right. Boy, we got some new stuff.
We got some new stuff.
I had to do some research on these ones, and I did. And then I was like, oh my gosh, there's so much cool stuff to talk about each one of these. So I will try to move it along in my section anyway. But I have a few cool things. All pens, actually, now that I look at it. Visconti has a pen called the Commedia fountain pen. It's similar to the Rembrandt. It may look kind of like a Rembrandt a little bit. However, they took the steel nib that you love so much from the Mythos, and they're putting this on this new Commedia pen. So the theme for this pen is after Dante Alighieri's Divine Comedy. Dante Alighieri is born in Florence, so I came to find out. He's kind of known as like the father for modern Italian language as well. So, kind of cool.
Didn't know that.
That's what I read.
Wow.
So there's 3 different pens based off of, Inferno, Hell, Purgatorio, Purgatory, and Paradiso, Heaven. So they've all got different colors to them. They've got the same kind of like intense kind of swirliness in the resin, just like the Van Goghs and the Rembrandts have had. So they look really, really nice. The Inferno one, solid black resin with some like flaming red in there. That looks really cool with a dark ruthenium trim. So a very like, dark kind of brooding pen. Looks really nice. The Purgatorio one has palladium trim, and the resin is like a taupe brown. So kind of mid, if you will. Just kind of in there. It's Purgatory.
It's not the most exciting brown.
But it's not supposed to be. It's Purgatory. It's supposed to
true.
be just pretty
bleak.
Blah.
Yeah.
Yes. And then Paradiso Heaven is sky blue with yellow gold trim. This one looks really cool. So 3 very different pens that fit the theme. These pens will be just under $200. But yeah, it should be kind of cool. So I'm curious what everybody thinks of these pens. Nice little alternative to the Mythos. All right. We have a new Namiki Yukari Maki fountain pen, and it looks really cool. So this is limited edition. They're only doing 2024 of them. That's the year. We're getting 69 of them in the US, from what I understand. It is the Bumblebee, and it's meant to represent the harmony of flora and fauna. And what better than a bumblebee to do that? Because
Perfect.
They're great pollinators. They're relatively docile. They don't sting very much, contrary to what my kids are better about it now. But when they were younger, literally every insect was a bee, and they were paranoid they were going to get stung immediately. They've never actually been stung.
Neither has Archer, but you'd think bumblebees were tigers.
Yeah. I mean, they do get kind of loud. And like around here, at least, they get pretty big.
I think that makes them cuter, though.
They do. They're like big poof balls.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the wasps and the yellow jackets.
They're
that are
mean
evil.
looking. To me, bumblebees are just like they're like little fuzzy beans
they're
floating
like,
around.
Yeah, they're like a bear.
Yeah.
They're like a little snuggly bear
Yeah.
of the insect world. Anyway, so it's very cool. And what's neat about this one, though, too, is that it's got the bees, of course, but then it's the flowers that they have are blue salvias, which are native to North America. So I thought that was kind of cool. It's like normally do a lot of like heavily Japanese themed things, cherry blossoms and the like. But I mean, I'm sure they've maybe done something, but this is the first I recall like a North American specific plant. So that was kind of cool.
Interesting.
And I had to ask Rachel because it's like a bluish purple kind of flower.
Mm-hmm.
And there's not that many of them because Rachel and I, when we got married, we wanted our colors were like blue and, kind of purple.
Mm-hmm.
And there were not many flowers to choose from that were naturally in that kind of blue family.
Oh, yeah.
There were more purples, but not very many blues. Delphinium is one that we ended up kind of centering it around, and we've done Delphinium pen and stuff like that. But I was trying to remember, she didn't remember either, but the blue salvia looked so familiar to me. It does kind of look like a Delphinium, but it's possible that could have been mixed in with her bouquet.
Yeah, they're less flowery than Delphinium, more stalky.
More planty, stalky.
We used to have some, but I don't know if you noticed this, but it's been hot and dry recently.
Has it now?
So what used to be salvia are now
just
burnt, crispy,
dead brownness
sticks.
Yes. With us, all of our deer have eaten everything, and now it's dying and shriveling in the hot sun. So that's beautiful.
Our salvia is very sad. It was pretty for a minute.
Yeah.
I've been watering it too, but
it's tough. It's a tough battle. Anyway, they used 3 different techniques of makie on this pen. The Hira makie, which is a flat design. Togodashi makie, which is the burnished and it's a little bit raised. So you see some like a little bit of 3D element in there. And then Rodden as well, some mother of pearl. kind of sprinkled in there. You got some gold dust and some rodden that kind of shows like the pollen and the bees, kind of gives it a little bit of movement in there. So it's pretty neat. Also, the box on this thing is super cool. The box is Hakone marquetry, which I actually got to see this when I went to Japan. They basically take wood, they cut it up into like a geometric shape and cut it into like long rods, and they basically like shave it, and then they glue it all together onto a flat surface. So it's like a geometric kind of repeating pattern.
Oh,
Super old technique, and it's all done by hand. But if you look at the surface of this box, it looks like honeycomb. It's very, very cool looking. So that I thought that was really neat, and you don't always see that on a box like this. Normally you just see like plain wood.
Yeah.
But yeah, it looks pretty cool.
Dang. Okay. Didn't expect that.
I'll have to. Well, yeah. If you look at it here, I'll just show you real quick, just so
you
got to look on your face like I need to see this.
Yeah.
Thing.
Well, generally, I mean, the pilot, the Namiki Yukari Royales, they're all in that same. Oh, that's the box.
That's the box.
I've seen that picture. I didn't know what the background was.
Yeah. So
that's
what they do is
box.
they create these like
wild.
basically like hexagonal rods of wood. That's all these individual pieces of wood they cut up and then glue together into that rod.
Oh, that's nuts.
And then they like shave it and then glue it all together.
Oh, that's crazy.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, usually it's just that really light color, kind of balsa wood feeling stuff.
Yeah. I think Polonia is what they typically use. It's a really light, it's a hardwood, sort of like in the oak family, but it's
very lightweight.
It's very lightweight, very strong. They use that a lot for like tansu chests back in the day.
Oh.
So that's because it's really strong, but really light as well. So it's good for like carrying
kind of like me.
Loads of stuff. Yeah, exactly. Strong and light. That's right.
One of those is true.
Oh my goodness.
No, it's
so
not.
yeah. Anyway, they have 18 karat gold nibs on there, number 10 size. So it's going to be about the size of the Pilot Custom 912. But it's got the Namiki, logo with the Mount Fuji on it and everything. So it looks really, really classy. It's $2,400, so it's definitely in that limited edition range. But it's a beautiful looking pen. Bumblebees are cool, and it's got a lot of blue on it. So with the marquetry as well, I'm like, dang, this is hot. I like this thing. Fine, medium, and broad nibs. There you go. All right, moving along. SCRIBO, new brand that we have. We're going to be featuring that today. Writing with them all in the spotlight, but basically this is sort of this is not a new brand. We've actually been aware of them for 5 or 6 years. They were sort of a spiritual successor that came out of OMOS when they kind of got busted apart. Several of the employees who were there, especially the ones focusing on the nibs, they started their own company, SCRIBO, and really they wanted to have like the focus purely on the writing experience. They've not been growing like crazy. They've been very measured in their approach. They probably understandably were hesitant to expand rapidly and take on investment and stuff because of what happened to OMOS previously and how that can go sideways sometimes. So they've just been taking it very, very slow. We've been talking to them for a while, and COVID disrupted some things too, but I think they're at the point now where they've got enough offerings and they've got enough capacity where we can start talking to them. So we're really excited to do this because we really, support them. And Luca, who's the main kind of guy behind it and does all the nib stuff, we were working with him previously with OMOS. So we have interviews with him like 10 years ago doing some OMOS stuff. So it's kind of neat. It's nice, like a little kind of full circle for us. It's like getting to see old friends again. But we have 3 different models of pens. They're not drastically different from each other, but they're all really, really nice looking pens. They're very clean, very classy looking. The build quality is really good. They might look like they're really heavy, but they're not. They're not super light, but they're very like, I don't know, they just feel very strong. So the 3 models, there's the Feel, which is the original model that they came out with. They maybe is the one that's kind of like their flagship, I guess, that they're most known for. We're gonna have that in 2 colors. We've got a blue black and then a translucent dark green. And those are the ones that I'll be showing you here a little bit later today. $645 for those. And they have really nice nibs, which I'll talk about those in a second. The other model is called the Ladata, which is similar to the Feel in its overall design, but it's a rounded barrel. The Feel has facets on it. So, a little extra work in doing those facets. They're not really sharp facets though. They're subtle and the grip's not faceted. So, it's just kind of a thing. If you don't dig the facets, you can look at the Ladata. It's a little cheaper too at $590. And the materials that they're using on the Ladatas here are really cool too. Yeah. There's a lot more depth to them. So I don't know, I kind of like that a little better, to be honest with you.
And those are both internal piston filler pen.
Yes, they are both piston fillers, which is also cool. And the ebonite feeds too.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of good things going on with these pens. And so they have two different colors there that we're carrying. There's one that's like a blue, purple, orange kind of color, and another one that's like more of a red orange. But they've got all kinds of swirliness and sparkles and all kinds of stuff, very galaxy looking. And then the last model that we have is called the Puma. So this is more like that tightly swirled resin. Like we've seen that before in a couple other Italian pens over the years. I mean, I think Delta did something with it back in the day and stuff like that. But there's a purple and a navy color, and that resin, it just looks really, really good. This one is the most different design from the other two because it doesn't have, that same overall kind of look. But I don't know, it's kind of cool. It's more of a rounded pen, but it has like this one flat part kind of, cut off on it that goes underneath the clip. I guess it can sort of act as like a roll stop of sorts when you have just the body of the pen. If you're putting that down, it can sort of, it's not going to stop it from like rolling like crazy if you really get it going, but it's nice to be able to kind of put it down like that. So that's kind of cool. And that pen is 505. And that one, do you remember if that one is a piston as well, or is that a
cartridge converter?
That one's a cartridge converter.
Which is why it's the best.
And I bet you can eyedropper convert it too, because there's nothing going on in that body.
Probably, yeah.
I haven't tried that, but yeah. So that's the thing. Or barrel fill it, if you will.
Barrel fill.
There you go. So anyway, we're going to have two colors of all these models of pens. They have more colors, but basically the way that SCRIBO works with everything is they do essentially like a limited run of every color. And they do fairly limited distribution. So it's not like they're pumping out thousands of these pens. You're talking more like a couple hundred of each of these. So I have no idea how long we're going to have any of these, especially the ones that say that they're more like limited edition. There's literally like maybe 200 that they make of some of these. So we may be cycling through some colors here and there, but it's an interesting brand to keep your eye on. And then the most interesting part, which we'll focus on here later, is going to be the nibs. So if you know anything about the Omas nibs back in the day, they had a range of flexible nibs, which are basically identical to these ones because it's the same people making them.
Well, they're using the same machinery. Not only did SCRIBO have a lot of the same employees move from Omas to SCRIBO, but they also purchased the nib manufacturing machines.
Yes.
So the same machines that are making these SCRIBO nibs are the same nibs, the same machines that made the Omas nibs. Mm-hmm. So if you are a fan of the old Omas nibs, these will be virtually identical.
Probably about this, as close as you can possibly get.
Yeah, the imprint will be different, but everything else, it's the same.
It's really good. So they have 18 karat nibs, which are more conventional, definitely bouncy, kind of springy nibs, but not really line variation, so to speak. Think about like pilot nibs and stuff like that. That's, going to write similar to Delta nibs. That we're only carrying in a medium nib right now. They have a huge range of nibs in both the 14 and 18 karat. It would be a lot for us to try to carry all this. So we're starting small. And then if we get more demand for them, we can expand that range. So if you are seriously shopping around, if you have experience with them and wanting to ask for more, you can let us know. But we're carrying that medium and the 18 karat. But I think what everybody's going to be most interested in with these is the flexible nibs. So these are actually advertised as flexible nibs. And I think it's legitimate that they're called flexible nibs. It's not just like, oh, it's flexible if you like really press really hard, but that's not what it's made for. No, like these are, the reason they're 14 karat is because the 14 karat gold alloy is a little bit stronger. And so they can do whatever modifications they need to a 14 karat so that it doesn't just like mush out and then not spring back. We've seen this with other ones. And I know from talking to nibmeisters and stuff that do a lot of like flex nib modifications, they actually prefer to do it on 14 karat because it's actually a better material to work with for those modifications for the flex. So that we're going to have it in extra fine and fine in the 14 karat flex for all three of these pens. So we'll be showing you what those look like today, but they're quite pleasant and quite wet as well. So that is it for SCRIBO for the moment. And then I got one more. TWSBI Eco T Eggplant Purple. So yeah, I mean, it's an Eco T. What can you say? So the T variant is a little more triangular. It's got the triangular sort of cap instead of the hexagonal cap. I kind of like it a little bit. I think the grip itself is slightly more triangular as well. I don't really notice that much of a difference, to be
Neither
honest
do I.
with you.
Some people are very particular about it. I'm not one of them. I barely
It's
notice.
such a subtle
It's
triangularness.
less subtle than a Lamy Safari for sure.
Oh, by far.
I mean, way more subtle.
More subtle
than a
yes.
Lamy Safari.
Yes, that's
Lamy Safari. Like the facets are very sharp. This is not that.
This one,
it's more. You can feel it more than a standard Eco, sure, but it's still not like a Safari by any stretch of the imagination.
You might not even notice it if somebody didn't tell you that it was triangular.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's basically just it's a different color, so you might like it. So I was looking at like other TWSBI pens because I've got a whole TWSBI collection at this point. They've done some purples, but not really vibrant purples like this. Like they've done some more muted colors. The TWSBI Eco Transparent Purple is probably the closest to this, but that one is darker and it's a lot more translucent. This one has like a slight bit of translucence, maybe like 10%.
Really?
It's very, very slight.
Oh.
Like you can sort of see the threads through the cap and stuff like that. But, it's probably just enough to give it a little bit of a glow, but you're really not going to like probably see the nib through the cap or anything like that, which honestly is probably better if you're one of those folks that doesn't like to see the ink splattering through your cap. But I haven't seen this pen in person yet. I've only seen pictures of it. But that one, do you know when we're launching that one?
It's got a launch date of the 26th, I believe.
26th. So that'll hopefully by the time this video's out.
Yes.
It will have launched already.
Yes.
There you go. Actually, all of these that I just mentioned will be up and available for sale by the time this video's out.
That's right.
Eco Extra Fine, medium, broad nib, 1.1, $32.99 for that pen. And that's it for me.
And that's it for the things we have right now. I wanted to give a little bit of the limelight to the things that are coming up because we've got a pretty interesting coming soon section on our website, and I wanted to hit some of the big dogs. The first being the Pilot Vanishing Point limited edition for 2024. This is an ombre pen, which we always get very excited about here. We're a big fan of the ombre Vanishing Points in the Goulet Pen Company office. This one is $350. It's coming in September, and you're looking at a light blue to pearl ombre. It's a fascinatingly beautiful pen. It has a really neat presentation to it, so check that out. You can sign up for the wait list. But again, it's September, so you have plenty of time to save up. And then we've also got on the other side of the, top 1 and 2 of the Japanese fountain pen, Sailor's coming out with another pen in July. This one is called Sunlight from the Ocean Floor. Sunlight from the ocean floor.
No, it's like if you're laying on the ocean floor looking up and seeing the sunlight coming down.
Oh, that makes way more sense.
That's what I thought.
You're laying on the ocean floor?
Not laying on the floor. Well, they named it ocean floor.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be like in the Marianas Trench. It could be like
a small ocean
near the sea.
A shallow ocean floor.
Yeah, like if you're like at the bottom of a pool and you look up and you can see that it's like mostly blue with some like white coming through, right? Like that's how I interpret it. But
that's why
everybody's commenting about like where is light coming from the ocean floor? That's fine.
That's what it's
pretty
called.
Dark place down there. But
the sunlight from the ocean floor is coming in July. That's going to be a Pro Gear Slim, a Pro Gear, and a King of Pens at $236, $312, and $816 respectively. Also coming, believe it or not, are an entire new collection of Jacques Herbin inks in their D bottles, the standard bottles, not 1670, the kind of ones that we've had since the beginning, Brian. New Jacques Herbin inks. Like, when has that happened?
Not that often.
I don't think it has at all. The regular ones? I don't know. I don't remember it ever happening, but it was a big deal. So we've got 5 new inks coming out. We've got Moulin Rouge, which is a red, Gris Trois, which is gray, Vert Métropolitain, which is green, Brun Eiffel, which is brown, and Bleu Varet, which is blue. Surprise, surprise on that. So 5 new colors. The Jacques Herbin are a very easy, friendly brand to use in your fountain pen, and I'm super excited that they're getting a refresh. So maybe get excited about that. Those are $13.95 a piece, and they're in those fun little bottles with the funky little jut out you can rest your pen on. So not every day you see one of those. And that's it for coming soon. But there's, again, a ton of stuff on coming soon if you wanted to click through and check that out. But those are the things that I'm most excited about anyway. All right.
Something we can all be excited about.
Yeah,
now.
Why not?
All right, let's cover a couple of quick company updates. All right, well, I regret to inform you all, you're going to have to adjust your weekly routine here because we are not going to be having a Pencast next week. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. It's not often we take off completely, but our editor was going to be off anyway, and Drew has more time off that he needs to take. And so I'm like, hey, Drew, this is a good time. Let's do it. It's week of 4th of July anyway.
Not going to wait until December this year.
Everybody, yeah, exactly. Everybody's, doing stuff and vacations and family things. This is a good time to take a week off. So we will be doing that next week. So I don't know, rewatch an old episode, go back to number 14. I don't know why. Just whatever, pick an old episode if you want. But, that's what we got. Also, next week, we're going to be closed on July 4th, which is Thursday. Our whole company is going to be closed because we will be doing whatever we do on July 4th, whatever everybody does. We're not doing anything as a company. We're not doing anything because we will not be here. You can still place orders, though. It'll just be like any other holiday. I probably don't need to explain it that much, but that's happening. So
I also forgot to write this down, but we will have a video this week.
Oh, that's right.
Yes. The blackest black. I don't know what I'm going to call this video yet.
Yeah, but title yet to be named.
Yeah, I took some time and I wanted to find out what the blackest of all the black inks were. So I battled 10 of them head to head, and I ranked them 1 to 10, 10 to 1. And it was a challenge.
Did my cameo make it into the video?
No, he didn't put that in.
Okay.
Yeah, or other
That's
Brian.
Fine.
Yeah,
that's totally fine.
I guess I'm guessing he just thought it wasn't organic because it wasn't at all.
I mean, it was pretty organic. I was literally just doing other stuff.
Hey, come here.
Yeah. He came in and was like, hey, can you come in and just talk about this over Drew's shoulder for a minute? And I did. And I was like, all right.
Yeah, I guess.
Whatever. But it's cool. So I won't be in it, but Drew will.
Yeah. But yeah, it was definitely a difficult and interesting video to do. I don't know if I got my rankings right, but I think that there's some things to be learned in there. So check that out if you want to.
If you didn't get it right, then you should definitely let him know about it.
Oh, sure.
Because he stakes his whole reputation on this.
I was so confident throughout that video.
Yes.
So confident.
That's right.
Anyway, that is up on YouTube now. You can go watch it if you haven't already.
Very cool. All right, let's do some Q&A.
Let's. All right. We're going to kick things off with, guess what? Question number 1. And that happens to come to us from Stationary Stream, who asks, do pigment inks like platinum pigmented inks clog fountain pens more than shimmer inks?
No, I wouldn't say more than shimmer inks. It's complicated because they're not exactly the same thing. Shimmer inks basically are pigmented inks because they have pigments of shimmer in them. But what we tend to call pigmented inks, they're all like waterproof inks. So they've got a little bit more going on in them than just pigment, right? So whether you're talking about the platinum pigmented or the Sailor, Kiwaguru, and all that kind of stuff, there's not that many fountain pen inks that are what you would consider pigmented, but the ones that are waterproof. So I don't know how much of the maintenance requirements for those is related to the pigment in them or is because of whatever the waterproof properties are, or maybe the combination of the two. But I don't have any hard, fast scientific evidence for any of this either. So I'm sort of just making this up and just going off of my experience and then what kind of customers have told us. But I feel like we hear about people having more flow issues with not all shimmer inks, but certain shimmer inks, because there are some that are just like jam-packed full of shimmer. And, certain pens may not be as conducive to that. I don't know if I would say clog, because clogging sounds like there's a major problem, but I would say there's more like restricted flow.
Impediment.
Some impediment. Yeah, exactly. I think it's more an issue that like the pen may not start up right away because the stuff can like gather in there, or, it may be more effort to clean it, stuff like that. It's just generally like a little higher maintenance. I don't really see that so much on the pigmented inks, the ones that are called the pigmented inks, unless you let them completely dry out in the pen. Then they're a little bit more of a bear to clean out, because the whole thing with the pigmented, like permanent pigmented inks, they're really, really good at like kind of drying on the surface of whatever you're writing on. So if you've got a really slick paper, it's gonna kind of stick better and it's going to be more permanent than, a ink that needs to deeply absorb into the paper would be. It also means it really stays in place. It's very light fast, much more so than a purely dye-based ink, because those pigments in there are physically going to block the sunlight. So they generally perform much better there. And then, they're better at paper that's really, really absorbent. That pigment's not going to absorb that much into the paper. It's going to kind of sit on the surface. And it's really good for artists who like to ink wash over top, or like to do any kind of water, or anybody who wants any waterproof qualities. The pigmented inks tend to be pretty good for that. So generally, I think you're really not getting people that are comparing too much of I was thinking of getting this shimmer ink, but instead I'm going to get this super black, not at all lots of character properties to it, and it's waterproof. But, so it's you're kind of looking at two different things, but I would kind of put them in the same category. But I would say, generally speaking, I see fewer flow issues with the pigmented ones, unless it completely dries out. Then it's not really a flow issue. Then it's a cleaning issue. So yeah, I would definitely not say that they clog more than shimmer inks. So I think I can pretty definitively say no to that answer. However, I will say the range of shimmer that can happen, size of pigment of shimmer, as well as the amount of shimmer in any given shimmering ink, can vary pretty wildly. So it is kind of tough to make a pure blanket statement like that. So there may be some shimmer inks. I feel like the Urban shimmer inks tend to be a little less pigmented, really finer pigment. They're not as hardcore as Private Reserve or even some of the Robert Austers and stuff. So your mileage will vary on this, but that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. I think that I will also say that, like you mentioned with the pigment inks clogging or containing a cleaning issue, you can get a legit clog with a shimmering ink if you factor in some drying out factors as well.
Yeah.
So if you have a poor seal on your pen and you've got some ink sitting, chambered, ready to go down your feed, if that chamber, be at the end of the feed, the post, or something like that, if there's a small narrow section of your pen wherever, if the liquid from that section dissipates and you've got nothing left but your shimmer particle, then yeah, a clog can certainly happen. If air does the evil that it does to our fountain pens. And I would say that the biggest difference between pigmented and shimmer inks is that both have particulate in them. Like Brian said, both of them have you could call it a pigment if you wanted to. That's technically it. There's an additive in there that changes or enhances its color. For the pigments, it's more or less a performance-based enhancement, less than a visual enhancement, which is what shimmer is. Yeah. But they both have stuff floating around in there. However, the pigment is more or less in permanent liquid suspension. And some of it would probably settle eventually, but it's pretty much in suspension and it's going to stay in suspension. Shimmer, on the other hand, does not stay in suspension.
Yeah.
It settles to the bottom and quickly. So in that regard, it's much more temperamental while you are writing than pigmented ink is going to be. And therefore, can, depending on how much you agitate your pen, rotate your pen, keep that shimmer moving around your ink reservoir in a consistent fashion, you're going to get a completely different performance than you would if you didn't move your pen around at all and all of your shimmer, gravity is going to just pull all of it straight down toward your feed. You're going to get a ton of shimmer at the beginning, and you might be a little bit more prone to clogging if you're trying to just force all of it down at the beginning. But if you agitate your pen consistently and well, obviously not shaking it too hard because you don't want ink going anywhere, then you can get a very predictable and consistent performance out of your whole reservoir. So, I think your deduction of having the 1670 Jacques Herbin inks as kind of the lower end of the shimmer spectrum, and then Private Reserve up at the top. Anything else is going to be somewhere in between those two extremes, I'd say.
Yeah, especially when you look at Diamine or Robert Oster, they have a lot of different colors that have shimmer in them.
Yeah,
and
and even
there's
then,
going to be a range.
And shimmer varies even between those. I will say that Ferris wheel press Fairy Tales ink, those have a ton of shimmer in them. Wearing Gold
Wearing Gold's pretty heavy.
Yeah, pretty heavy on the shimmer. And so is Colorverse. Their shimmer ink is quite shimmery.
That's true.
So they're all somewhere. I don't think we can rank all of them because even within those brands, they differ. So you just kind of have to try and see.
There you go. Well, hopefully that gives you a little bit better idea of what's going on. Clear as mud. Okay. Drew, I got a question for you.
Okay.
Mackenzie says, possible to have saturated shading ink? If yes, suggestions? Saturated and shading. That seems contradictory, doesn't it?
Yeah. I'm going to channel Brian a little bit and be like, well, it depends on your definition of what saturation is.
Yes.
I know. I try to avoid it, but sometimes you can't.
I mean,
sometimes you can't. So
it is.
My definition of saturation are good, deep, very rich, kind of opaque colors. So if you compare Sailor Manyo Haha to Diamine Marine, like Diamine Marine is saturated by comparison.
Very much so.
But if you compare Diamine Marine to, Red Dragon, not so much. So it really depends on where you're coming at and what you're comparing it to. But I will say, sticking with the Diamine Marine reference, turquoises almost always produce the potential for great shading, if that is indeed what you're after. If you've got it in a fine nib, it ain't going to happen. But if you've got it in a broad or stub nib, you're going to get some good shimmer, regardless of whether or not you're choosing a turquoise from Noodler's, from Private Reserve, from Diamine, whatever. Sailor, Pilot, turquoise, lighter teals, they always shade phenomenally well. And I would say that is probably my top. It's the color that I think of first when I think of saturated shading. Most of the time, shading occurs naturally without any sort of conscious effort in the lighter colors that are not saturated, like your Neko Yonagi, your Haha, your Sailor Ink Studio 123, 224. Those are not light colors at all. I mean, those are not saturated colors at all. You could, see right through them sometimes. But turquoise, pretty solid bet for, a decent level of saturation and vibrance while also having the potential to pool in certain areas where you lift your pen that produce shading. I did do a video on my top favorite shading inks. If I remember, I'll link it above, but otherwise just type in shading. You can find a video on that from both me and Brian. I will also say that my second most go-to saturated shader is sepia. And a lighter brown, like your standard sepia tones, can be just like turquoise in that it will almost always give you rich shading while not looking at all transparent or kind of watery. A lot of good shaders have that watery look, like they don't have a ton of saturation. Sepia is a great one, whether or not you're going with some of my favorites, Robert Oster Honeybee, which is more yellow, but they also have Cafe Crema. Noodler's Golden Brown is super popular. There are a lot of great sepias out there that are just like the brand name in the ink and then sepia. And don't sleep on something that's just called sepia. Those are great inks, beautiful colors. And I think a lot of people just kind of look at sepia like it's a lighter brown. It's boring. It actually creates a nice variation when you lift your pen up, if that is indeed what you're after, which I think Mackenzie might be. So for me, it's sepia and turquoise. Those are two colors that, regardless of brand, if you go toward that route, you can generally find what I consider to be a saturated shader.
That makes sense to me.
All right.
One thing that came to mind for me with this is Noodler's, because Noodler's is famously extremely saturated colors kind of across the board.
Yeah.
But there's also some really good shaders in there. One that comes to mind is just straight up Noodler's turquoise, which is like a kind of a more of a teal than a turquoise.
Yes.
I think it's more of a green.
It's like a light blue.
Yeah. Well, it's it's like heavy green.
I'm thinking of turquoise of the Mesas.
Yes.
That's a light blue.
Those are two completely different colors, which they both shade like crazy. But the turquoise, the darker one, is not one, like based on how saturated it is not one that you would think would have any shading properties to it, but it actually shades like a beast. So, it is interesting because it makes me think like there's got to be some other factor to shading than just saturation of the ink. You know what I mean? So
probably.
Saturation is basically like how much of the color is there. It's not necessarily like how light or dark the color is, because that's more the hue
Yeah.
or the lightness, or the value, if you will, if you're looking at a digital format. But it's you can have an extremely saturated ink, which basically means like it won't hold any more dye than that, but it can still be a lighter color. But there are some really, really saturated ones that like they still look super, super dark in the when it's shading, but then it just contrasts itself a lot and has high variation, I guess, which I guess in its nature, that is what shading is. And I think you tend to see that more with lighter inks, because essentially when you cross over your letters or you like let the ink down really heavy, there's essentially like more dye in those parts.
More contrast too, because you start with something really kind of like a flex nib. You're starting with it.
Yeah.
If you have an extra fine flex, you're starting from one extreme.
Yeah.
If you have a lighter color, you're kind of starting from one extreme.
Yeah. So it makes sense that you would look very different, but it is kind of perplexing, and maybe there's chemistry behind it that I don't fully understand.
Almost certainly.
Yeah. It might have to do with like the surfactants or some other, the lubricants or something else that's used in the thing that gives it its properties that causes shading even within a really highly saturated color. So I don't know. Just keeps inks nice and interesting.
Yeah, I have a lot of favorites, but not all of them would I consider saturated. Like I love grays, but they're just not. That's not what I would call a saturated colors. But they do shade really well.
Yeah, I'm just doing.
And oranges and yellows, they tend to shade really well. But again, not particularly punchy colors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, saturation. I'm just I asked our little robot overlord here, so not verified, but gives you some idea a little bit. It does say like, more pigment or dye deposited in a certain area gives you that saturation, because it's basically like those coloring components like gather up more in one place, which means you're gonna get that shading effect. Also says like ink formulation, so based on the other properties, which is kind of like what I just alluded to, might have components that separate slightly when it's put onto paper, which I think is maybe why you can have some really saturated colors that can still shade. Like when it actually hits the paper, some of the properties of that ink might kind of split out and separate a little bit, So I don't know. Very interesting. It's got me thinking about that. And then paper obviously has a lot to do with it too. You can put, tap water on Tomoe River and it's going to shade.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's a great water quality test for those of you wondering.
That's right.
Just put it on Tomoe River.
Take a strip of Tomoe and dip it in there.
See what color halo appears.
That's
like,
right.
Ooh.
You're like, oh, this has got a green tint to it. I must have a lot of iron and copper in my water or whatever the heck.
Brian, you ready to pick some favorites?
Always.
I know you love
me,
it.
Mr. Decisive over here.
Well, we've got two people that want to know some favorites. So Jacob here wants to know our favorite black ink.
Mm-hmm.
And RMG Company says, what is Brian's favorite dark green ink? Yeah.
Well,
so I might mention my favorite black ink, but RMG Company wants to know your favorite dark green. So I just need to not going to tell you.
In classic Brian form, I don't just have one.
There's a few words
many.
Here. Yeah.
Black.
I like how halfway. Never mind. You're asking yourself questions in here.
There's a lot of
question marks.
There are some question marks. I'll explain them.
Okay.
You're seeing a bit of like how Brian's brain works in bullet point form. Favorite black ink. I don't know. How do you determine what is favorite? Just which one I like the most?
What does favorite mean? He asks.
The one that I definitely used the most has been Noodler's Black.
Of course.
Because that's the standard for the nib nook.
Yeah.
I know that ink really well. I'm familiar with its properties.
You've wiped it on your face.
I have wiped it on my face.
Yeah.
I've gotten that ink on my fingers probably more than any other ink. And it washes up quite well, actually. So, overall, it's a really stellar black. So I think like if I could only pick one black for the rest of my life, that's not a bad one to go with.
It hasn't made you, throw it away thus far.
No, it's been pretty reliable. But there's some other inks that have some different properties to it. So that's a good, like all around black ink. The Platinum Carbon Black is a great ink as well. Slightly higher maintenance, but you get slightly higher performance in certain scenarios too, if you really want those like waterproof properties. If you don't need all that, then you really don't need Noodler's Black or Platinum Carbon Black. I really like Jacques Herbin Pearl Noir. That was literally like in the first shipment of ink that we ever carried at Goulet Pens. And I use it and I was like, man, this is a great black ink. And it's just like, there's other great black inks too that have come along. And I'm sure there's others that are fairly comparable as well. But it's like Pearl Noir has just been up there at the top ever since the beginning. Not because of any crazy properties. It flows really well. It looks very dark, and it cleans super easy out of the pen. I've never had issues with it giving me any problems whatsoever. So I'm a big fan of Pearl Noir as well. So, but I'll be honest with you, other than when I'm like specifically testing black inks or doing the Nib Nook, I almost never use black inks in my pens because I'm like, why? There's so many other great colors, you know? So it's like, I might keep a pen here and there inked up with that for like document signing purposes. And usually like if I'm going to use a black ink, I'm probably going to go with waterproof just because that's maybe part of the reason why I would use black anyway. But most of the time I want to use colors. So, you know, I will say I have not like thoroughly tested extensively nearly all the black colors that we have because we have a lot of black inks, like 50 or something like that. I think it might be the color we have the most of. Well, it depends if you know, like lump dark blues and light blues and turquoises together. There's a lot of blues, but like of just like straight up colors, you know, there's a lot of black inks that we have because people use it and it's popular. So anyway, those are 3 of my favorites, I guess, for slightly different reasons. Dark greens. Okay. So I went some different routes. I have a lot of bullet points with question marks at the end of them. First off, does Emerald Chivor count as a dark green ink?
No.
Because that is by far my favorite, you know, of everything I'm going to mention here.
I think you've called that ink teal before.
Is teal dark green? I don't know where the cutoff is, but I love EOC. I've talked about it a ton. We won't focus on that too much. I'll move on to other things because I don't think you just want to hear me say the thing that I've always liked. I know you're a fan of Diamond Sherwood Green. Right? Are you?
I don't think so.
No? What is your green? What's your green that you always like?
Spearmint.
Spearmint.
Yeah.
Spearmint's good, but is that dark green though?
No, it's more of just kind of like a middle of the road green.
Yeah.
It's more on the darker side.
It's on the edge of dark
But if you
green.
want dark green, you go with avocado.
I put avocado on here, but that's really more of, I consider that more of like an olive green.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Olive green
that's
is
a little
like...
more olive to me.
No.
It's like a dark olive green. Yeah. I would consider it that. When you hold it up next to these other ones, like, so for me, Diamond Sherwood Green is like classic forest green.
Yeah.
Just straight up dark green. Like that's the type of color that I visualize in my head when you say, think of a dark green. Like that will pop up in my head. And it's funny because like Rachel and I have been in this business so long and she does a lot of the website work. I'm using more inks than she is on a regular basis, but she is looking at all the inks and has to classify them for different things on the website. So pretty much when Rachel and I are like, you know, looking at, you know, I don't know, say we're shopping for a sofa and we're looking at different colors or we're getting paint samples or something like that, and we want to repaint whatever, our bathroom or bedroom or whatever, we will refer to all the hues of different things in ink colors.
Of course.
You know, because that's just what's most top of mind for us. So people probably think we're crazy because we're in the store talking about all these weird things and ox blood and
this looks like Monbutto's hat.
Yes, exactly. I prefer a writer's blood, you know. Anyway, that's just a fun little side note. So Sherwood Green, great ink for just overall forest green. No crazy properties to it, but its diamine flows pretty well. Nice dark saturated color. It's really just kind of the shade that draws me to it. Another one, this is for like a super dark green, is Noodler's Zhivago. It's like almost black. And that I really like it. And it's really pretty unique in that way. Though the reason I put a question mark on this one is because when I was looking at Diamine Dark Forest, it looked kind of similar, but I've not used Dark Forest.
Isn't that a shimmer ink?
I don't know. I just looked it up very quickly. I don't think so.
Okay.
Maybe I'm wrong about that, but it does have me curious. And I'm like, maybe I need to pull a sample of that and try it out. But, you know, in case you didn't want something, you know, because the Noodler Zhivago is like super dark, super saturated. So you almost have to like double take to even see that it's green because it looks almost black.
No, it's not. It's not a shimmer ink. It's one of those cheese wedge bottles.
Yeah. Okay, but to me it looks real. Like it looks like a Zhivago type of almost black.
Yeah. It's very dark.
So I have never used Dark Forest. I kind of forgot about it.
Magical Forest. It's a different forest down the street.
Forest.
Yeah.
Yep. This one's not magical. It's just dark. It's just brooding. It's like emo forest.
Oh. Like Feingorn.
There you go. Another one, Robert Oster River of Fire. It's
Oh,
a dark green
yeah.
that's got like a nice red sheen
Yeah,
to
you
it.
went through a River of Fire phase.
River of Fire is good. It's almost like it's like a darker version of Emerald of Chivor without the shimmer.
Mm-hmm.
You know, which I really like it for that. Like, it's not super uncommon to have some dark greens that do start to get some of that red shimmer. You know, it's like dark greens and dark blues both tend to have, I guess, whatever dye components that they have in them. You know, if it's a certain level of saturation or whatever, certain components that get used, there's a red sheen that can sometimes come out of them. But the River of Fire is one where it comes out much more prominently. And so that one, to me, it's like, because of the red sheen, it looks awesome, but it's like, it's hard for me to like put that in the same camp as, you know, like a Zhivago or a Sherwood Forest, just because it's like, it's kind of, or a Sherwood Green, because it's like, it's kind of a different vibe. Mm-hmm. So, and then maybe Diamine Holly, it seems to do some of the same thing, but I haven't used Holly. It seems like a dark green with a red as well, which makes sense because that's exactly what Holly looks like. So I haven't used that one, but I've used River of Fire, and that just looks incredible. And then I put PR Avocado. I classified that under olive green, although Drew may disagree with me on that one. But yeah, they're all good greens. Like, really, it's just kind of like different shades, maybe different properties, but I felt like, okay, these all kind of fit for me. I guess if I had to pick one, since like I got asked what is my favorite dark green, if we're not counting Emerald of Chivor, I might say River of Fire.
Nice. Yeah. I remember you went, you did multiple inkings with River of Fire around the time it was fairly new.
Yeah. Yeah. I like it. Robert Oster's good stuff. And, you know, I do kind of like the sheen. It's not like super crazy, like a, you know, Organic Studio Nitrogen kind of a sheen, but it's definitely prominent in there. But I don't know. I just find it interesting.
Yeah.
What about you, Drew?
Well, I need to echo what you said about Pearl Noir. I have never inked up Pearl Noir in 13 years until now.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
This is the first time you've ever used it?
Well, why would I? It's we've always had more saturated blacks, but I recently did the best blacks video. I included Pearl Noir on it. I was happy with it. But this little cheap pen that was gifted to me is one of these little inlaid nibs. I think this is from like the 80s or 90s. It's a Pilot Gakken. I've been using this exclusively. I can't take this thing apart.
Right.
And just look at it. Like, what am I going to do with this?
Yeah, you don't want that thing to get all gunked up.
So
you need an easy to clean ink in there.
Exactly.
Pearl Noir is perfect for that.
And I've been sleeping on Pearl Noir, but now I'm like, well, hold on. That is exactly what I want in here. Mm-hmm. It's an extra fine, a little stingy nib.
Okay.
So I did go with the black, but I'm like, you know, with Arbonne inks, none of them are super saturated colors. So it's like, do I pick a color that's going to look a little weak, or do I just go with a black that's going to look fine? I went with a black that's going to look fine, and I know it's going to be easy to clean out because I can't fully disassemble this pen.
See, I agree with you that most of the standard line of the Jacques Arbonne is fairly unsaturated.
It's fine.
But I think Pearl Noir is actually pretty saturated. I think it kind of breaks the mold from the rest of their line.
Yeah.
Which is why I think it's one of the more popular ones.
So for me, that made the most sense for this pen.
That's a perfect use case for it, to be honest.
I will tip my hat to that. I don't know. I wouldn't call it my favorite black. I find myself more often going to carbon black as my favorite black. Mm-hmm. But I think I might have a new one, but I'll let y'all watch the Best Blacks video from this week to see. Just travel along with me on this journey of discovery, because there were some surprises had.
Yeah.
So
it's always fun.
Then there's that. As far as dark green, avocado is probably my number one, because ebony green is now gone. Ebony green was my go-to. So for me, like, it's so hard to remember all of these inks. So naming is so helpful to me.
Yeah.
And just having ebony brown, ebony purple, ebony blue, ebony green.
Yeah.
I'm like, if I wanted a really, really dark version of any of these colors, I would just go to PR.
You know, that's what you're getting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now they're all gone except for ebony purple, I think. So ebony green,
they weren't that popular.
I know. But
they were all really nice colors.
I know.
If y'all want them back, ask us for them.
Why are you asking them? Why don't you ask me? Look at me.
We know where you stand on it, Drew.
Shop liver over here.
Well, are you paying for them, Drew? Are you buying them with your dollars? I don't think so.
I am a marketing professional, Brian.
Well,
think of how many butter popcorn bottles I've sold.
Well, we'll see. Yeah, and where's butter popcorn now, huh?
Oh no, am I cursed? Am I cursed to the inks that I love?
I don't know. Scoreboard, Drew.
Oh,
That's
no.
all I'm saying.
Oh gosh, don't come for the mythos. All
That
right.
one's doing okay.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, that's it for me.
Okay, cool. All right, next one. Kevin Black has a question. What are your favorite inks when it comes to flow, not color, and why?
All right, we are continuing our inky journey today on episode 141. So my first inclination, like yours may be, or at least the first couple inclinations, Iroshizuku has to pop in there as far as
It's pretty known for being a good flowing ink. Yeah.
it's never offended me in any way. I've never inked up a pen with Iroshizuku and have it given me any performance issues. Like the flow is always consistent. I tend to gravitate toward that more than Jacques Herbin just because of the color variety. It is a little bit more saturated. There is a bit more of a vibrance if you look at the collection as a whole than there is in Jacques Herbin. Both are easy to clean in my experience. Jacques Herbin is known to be more gentle. I have never had a problem with Iroshizuku, but I do know that some pen makers do prefer, going outside of Iroshizuku if they've got, vintage rubber components or things like that. But again, in the pens that I've ever dealt with, it's been fine. So that is first comes to mind. Konpeki, especially, like I've just kind of defaulted to Konpeki for so many years as like, if I need a gentle, pretty ink, Konpeki is it.
Yeah.
It's just my default. And then Jacques Herbin, like they've proven effective as well. They are extraordinarily easy to clean. They are gentle. Those are my super safe examples. But I will say that generally speaking, I've never really been surprised by an ink giving me problems that I didn't kind of expect. In that I expect some level of interesting behavior from any ink that is either really crazy looking or is advertised to have a unique property, like pigment, like sheening, like shimmer, not shade. Shading ink that's not something that adds, you don't have to add anything to an ink to make it shade. If anything, you take it away. But if your ink doesn't have anything crazy going on with it, it's probably going to be fine. There are some brands out there that tend to produce more dry inks, like, Pelikan 4001, Ferris Wheel Press. I think more commonly people refer to those as drier inks, but that's not always the case with every single ink within that collection,
Yeah.
So, but if you're not doing iron gall, if you're not doing anything permanent or sheeny or shimmery, it's probably not going to surprise you. If it looks like, I don't know, that looks a little funky, then yeah, maybe it is. But if it's just like a standard looking color, it's probably going to be fine, regardless of what brand it is. And then a lot of people feel like it's fair to mention that a lot of people have a reverence for Waterman ink being the best, most safe ink out there. And it is very safe. But it's also pretty boring, and it's no more safe than Jacques Herbin has been safe, and you do get more color variety with Jacques Herbin. So I won't, but a lot of people, it has that brand recognition that Jacques Herbin doesn't have. So I get that, and it's been used for a bazillion years. So a lot of people maintain that Waterman Blue is like the go-to safest, most non-offensive blue out there. And maybe it is. I don't know. But there are other ones that are arguably just as safe as that. But
I think that's more from like pen restorers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But, I don't claim to know more than they do about it. They see pens every day. They're impacted by things. I do think that like it's difficult for somebody restoring a pen to make a blanket judgment about a given ink. Because, just because somebody might have handed them that pen and said, oh, I had this ink in there, it doesn't mean that that's exclusively what was used in there, or that their pen maintenance schedule was, acceptable or whatever. Like there's so many factors. There's definitely been a history in the fountain pen world of blatant accusations being made against entire brands or entire whatever that is just probably not warranted.
And we encounter that a lot in customer service. Like we sometimes... You have customers say like, no, it was fine until I used this ink. And sure, if we took that as exactly what it is, we might say, oh, well, this ink. But no, you get the pen back, you evaluate it in its totality, and more often than not, you're like, actually, there's something else going on here. You test it with that same ink, test with a different ink, and the problem persists. And it
Yeah.
usually is something else. So
For us, for us as retailers selling a lot of different inks to a lot of different people, ours is less of like, oh, there's this like one pen that was used for years with this ink, therefore I make a conclusion about this ink. And us, it's more like this ink is in so many different people's hands, in so many different pens. If there's a problem that's going to be happening like across the board or in totality, we're going to hear about it from a whole bunch of different people. And if what we're hearing is like very isolated kind of individual instances, then it's like there might be another factor besides just
yeah,
the ink.
if we knew that an ink universally ruined pens, we would not carry it in our store.
Yes.
So none of the inks that we have do that.
Not to say that some inks can't be better for pens than others, or
For sure,
especially like vintage stuff.
Yeah,
when
we
you
do
get into,
not.
like rubber sacks and
We're
these types of things.
not
That I
experienced
don't
there. We're not going to say this is what you need for your vintage pen. Like we don't know
But
enough about that.
That's honestly not even the question. We went down a little bit
No.
of a rabbit hole there, but flow though.
My favorite inks for flow are Iroshizuku. I think that there's vibrance there, and there's consistent, safe flow. So I love Chikurin, I love Yamabudo, I love Konpeki. So love those three.
Takasumi's nice too.
Takasumi's great.
Nice, yeah.
But a great variety, and you're not sacrificing vibrance for safety, in my opinion. So, but really, if you take kind of your middle of the road, non-weird inks from Noodlers, from Diamine, which have some crazy funky inks, those have been fine for me for a decade plus. Like I don't have any complaints about the actual flow of any of those. They don't give me problems. Robert Oster, Sailor, like they're all fine. I'm not super picky about flow. Unless it just doesn't work, then it's fine with me. So I haven't had a lot of problems, but the go-to safest, most consistent flow is probably Iroshizuku for me.
Okay. Now, one thing I wanted to kind of ask about, just so we can like be talking about the same thing. When we're talking about like good flow, in your mind, does that mean like very wet flow, or is it just like it doesn't dry out, like it just writes consistently?
Consistently.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I think it can be interpreted different ways. Like good flow can mean like generous wet flow.
Well, that they just
As
have favorite
opposed
when
to-
it comes to flow. So for
Yeah.
my favorite flow is just, it does what I want it to do and it writes consistently, doesn't skip, doesn't dry out, works in a
Okay.
wide variety of
Yeah.
pens with a wide variety of nib sizes.
Makes sense. Okay.
Just versatility and just kind of workhorse.
That's just, I'm asking more because it's like, I've always had a bit of a hard time totally nailing down the vernacular around ink flow because I don't think it's like as standardized as maybe some other things, because
Certainly not.
you can't really see it. You maybe can feel it, but not necessarily. It is kind of subjective as to like what is the flow of a given ink. Even when we're like reviewing inks and stuff like that, I'm like, what do I call this? It's like, unless it's on like one end of the extreme or the other, it all kind of falls into like just a medium flow.
One thing that really helped me out was when I started doing all the swabs. Because there was a time where I wasn't doing them, and then it switched to a time where I was doing all of them. Some inks, when you dip a glass pen into it and you start writing with the glass pen, it just ejects all the ink at once. And then some of them the ink just like stays on there and doesn't move.
Yeah.
So that was like such an easy kind of gauge of judgment that I was like, okay, well this explains why this ink has been a little cantankerous in my pen.
Yeah.
Because it's not even coming down off the glass.
That's interesting.
So,
or like with the Kakimori nib, have you experienced the same kind of thing?
Same thing. Yep.
Some of them, it feels like you're like having to drag it out of that nib.
Yeah.
Right?
I will write the first word of the ink name and I'll have to re-dip because like I can see the ink on there, but it's just not moving.
Yeah. Interesting.
And I'll reposition and everything. Like I'm used to. I've done hundreds of them at this point.
Yeah.
But some of them are just like really stingy.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Like really, and they'll really, and we've talked about in the past, like does how the ink stick to the side of the sample vial have anything to do with the flow? And big old mystery to us. We don't know. Like that's when you start to try to gauge and measure surface tension and things like that. And adherence, we talked about, the stickiness of plastic, and totally out of our depth there. But
I know enough to be dangerous.
To your point,
in that way,
it is subjective for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Because, it's just it's one of those things that I've always struggled to be like very confident.
Same.
in that middle range. Like I'm with you, like the Pelikan 4001, super dry.
Dry.
That's like my go-to, like some of the driest ink out there, which is great for taming a wet feeling pen, honestly. And then there's other ones, like I consider Jacques Herbin to be on the wetter side, and Iroshizuku probably as well. And then other brands like Sailor, I struggle because I'm like, I've used some Sailor inks that feel like they gush. I've used other ones that feels like I'm trying to drag it out of the pen. You know, I feel like some of the Ink Studio ones that I've used, they're just not gushing out of there. Like I have to really feel like I really have to work to get it out.
I would agree with that.
So it's really tough to like make a like kind of a broad statement. You know what I mean? So what is helpful is like I actually use our own website because we have all the products that have reviews, and we've customized our ink review, you know, ink product reviews to have things like flow and dry time and stuff like that in there, which is totally subjective, but with enough people's feedback about it, you can get somewhat of an idea of how something might flow one ink to another. So that's helpful for me, you know, if I'm trying to remember or I'm just not quite sure. But there's so many variables. It depends on the absorbency of the paper. It depends on the feed that it is, like an ebonite feed versus a plastic feed. It depends on the nib size. You know, there's just so many factors. It's very difficult for me to like objectively say one thing flows better than the other. But that's we're talking more about like trying to measure flow.
Yeah.
I guess we're just taking the question way further than it needs to, mainly because that's what I do. Urban has always treated me really well. Iroshizuku has always treated me really well. I've had a really good experience with a lot of diamine colors as well. So those are pretty good. Pelikan, super dry. Robert Oster's really always treated me pretty well too. But again, like anything with more than 40 colors, you're probably going to get some that are not going to flow as much in addition to ones that are going to flow really wet. So it's going to be a broad spectrum, but best thing I can say is look at the reviews on the site.
Yep. Do you ever find yourself like, because I know we've talked about this before with having preferences and favorites, when you write with, like we do this for our job, we do this for 8 hours a day, you know, talk about and use fountain pens.
Yeah.
And I think that we've both gotten very used to such a variety of behaviors, both in terms of inks and in terms of pens.
Yeah.
And having just be totally used to all this, like I sometimes struggle to have a lot of preferences because I just, you know, I'm like, yeah, this one kind of acts like this one kind of acts like this, and I'm kind of fine with a lot. And flow is kind of one of them. Like, you know, it's different, but I'm like, it's fine. I don't, you know, it doesn't bother me. So I do wonder, I'm like, if I hadn't,
do we know too much, Drew?
Yeah, like if I hadn't written with so many,
are we like jaded old salts here?
Or like, yeah, or do I just kind of like, yeah, they're all fine. They're different, but fine. Like, yeah, I don't know.
I find that sometimes it is, unless I'm like really intentionally sitting down, like for the purpose of like reviewing it like that in detail, unless it's like kind of on one extreme or the other, it just kind of falls into a middle ground.
That's kind of how I feel too. Yeah,
definitely. Especially because like, you know, I don't know. It depends on what kind of nib I'm using and how I'm writing with it and stuff like that. You know, I may not even exclusively be thinking about the impact that ink is having necessarily.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I find that if I like I'm trying to do an ink to get to know the ink really well, I have to have like a standardized like pen and paper to use it on. Otherwise, I'm like, oh well, I don't even know
who knows what's causing
the factor
this.
Here.
Yeah.
Anyway.
All right. Well, you definitely stumped us more than you probably intended to on that one.
Yeah. The long answer is it depends. Okay.
All right. Take us home.
All right. No, you take us home.
Oh, me take us home.
Yeah. I'm answering. You're
That's
asking.
right. Drew is asking something from Martha. So Martha's taking us home with, Martha says, I buy a lot of the metal pens, and I find that the barrel usually comes loose from the nib section, which the plastic pens do not, even when I'm writing with it. Is there something that I can do on the screw threads to temporarily keep the barrel from unscrewing, but not being so tight that I won't be able to unscrew it? I hesitate to try anything that might ruin the pens. Or am I just doomed to keep tightening the barrel?
You're doomed. I'm just kidding. Maybe.
Or is he?
It is interesting why this happens. Do you have this happen a lot?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, not a lot, but I notice it. Like I've if I'm just, you know, either using a metal pens or just pens with metal threads,
You think it's more the threads or like the metal? I would think the metal body doesn't really have anything to do with it.
No,
it's more
no.
the threads.
Yeah, if it's metal and metal threads, I find that those stay tighter together for less time.
Interesting. Why is that, do you think?
I don't know. That's what,
just because it's like a slicker material, probably. It's not
I'm guessing that. Yeah, I'm guessing that's because it's a slicker material.
Yeah. Okay.
And you know what? I've seen that same thing happen with screws as well. So sometimes screws, the vibration of screws can like rattle themselves apart, or just rattle themselves a little bit more loose.
I've had it where like the cap is easier to come off the pen, like with all metal threads.
Well, think about plumbing. Like, most of the pipes are going to be PVC plastic, and I think that there's something to be said about the grip that you get with plastic threads,
the texture of it, sure,
as opposed to just metal on metal threads.
Interesting.
So you can use, there's plenty of plastic piping out there, but you need to solder, or you have rubber gaskets that help with the connections. But with plastic, you can kind of just use plastic on plastic. There's something.
Well, you glue those. PVC usually glue it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, it will hold, but it won't hold because it's like under pressure.
Yeah.
Different scenario.
Yeah, but I do think that there's more tension with plastic on plastic than there is metal on metal.
Yeah, I think because there's a little more give in the material. Maybe it's like the threads themselves will like bend or like
And when you like, because there is definitely some give. So even if you're talking about metal on metal threads, if the actual conjunction of the pen and the grip section are plastic on plastic, when you made plastic and plastic together, kind of like the Lamy 2000 grip section. So that's like that kind of polycarbonate on polycarbonate. You get that nice like like
it really like you feel like.
But when it's metal,
you feel like it's really holding.
Right. Yeah. You can't really over tighten metal. Like once it hits. Like you're done.
Yeah, kind of.
So I'm guessing it has something to do with that.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, one thing that came to mind that I quickly, as I thought through it, I was like, this is probably not a factor. But I was thinking about, because I do some metalworking. Well, anytime you have like a bolt that's like really stuck inside of whatever it's threaded into, you try to use like a WD-40 or like some rust remover thing. But one trick to get it out of there is to heat it up. Because metal expands when it's heated. So if you have any type of thing that's threaded, if you heat it up, the thing that it's threaded into should expand more than the bolt itself, and it will make it easier to unscrew. But there you're usually like heating it with a torch, like a significant amount. And I was like, probably the heat from your hand is not expanding that metal enough.
Probably not.
To make a difference. But the thought crossed my mind, it's probably not heating up more than what's room temperature? Say 70 some degrees, and your hand might get no higher than 98.6. So, I mean, I don't know how hot your hand will actually get a pen, but
I've had it happen with my Diplomat Arrow.
The Diplomat Arrow, really?
Because like that thing, that's just flat metal on flat metal. You spin the barrel closed on top of the grip section, and
you've had it like come off, just
not come off, but like it loosens. It loosens, and I have to just kind of do a little tiny bit of a turn to get it to tighten again. Because there's just no give. It hits it and it's tight. Whereas if it was a plastic pen, you could give it a little bit of a crank to keep it really, really tight.
Interesting. I'll have to pay more attention to this. I haven't had this happen to me enough to think about it, like have it really stick in my memory. Like, oh yeah, this pen always gives me this trouble.
It's not often with me, but when I read this, I was like, actually, yeah, like this has happened. I think of the metal pen. I don't have a lot of metal pens, but the ones that I do have, I have noticed that. I have to I've never really had to be like, oh, interesting. My pen is not 100% tight. My barrel's not 100% tight against my grip section. When that has happened, it has been a metal pen.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah. Like almost 100% of the times. Like
I will say I also pretty historically will crank the crap out of my stuff. Like I will tighten up jars and stuff like that. And then Rachel's like, I can't open this, like my whatever, like tops for mugs and stuff like that, especially when the kids were younger and you'd have like a sippy cup kind of a thing. I was like, they're going to take abuse. Like you need to ratchet that thing down. And like every time we go to do dishes, she'd be like, I can't open this cup. And I'm like, so I think I have more of a problem of like probably ratcheting it down a bunch. So I may not actually be experiencing this very much just because I really crank it down. But I didn't really think about it that much. It might just be something I naturally do. So I'm genuinely curious, like, is this a thing?
Yeah.
Because now I have like 2 data points, between Drew and Martha here. But I'm genuinely curious, like, is this something that y'all experience with your metal pens? Is something more common? I'm very curious. So, okay, a couple thoughts in terms of actually like doing something about this, right? Cranking it down more is one option. That's the good thing about metal is it can take a pretty good amount.
Probably not going to break it.
So you're probably not going to break it unless you're truly abusing it, but I doubt you will. I abuse my stuff more than pretty much any other natural person might. I was thinking about, okay, what are a couple of ways that you can have like a slick metal grip thread that provides some kind of additional resistance that is not permanent and that does not like cause any, whatever permanence change to the material itself.
Teflon tape?
Teflon tape certainly came to mind. But the problem with Teflon tape is it doesn't stay. So usually when you're tightening it, I mean, at least for like, garden hoses and like these types of things, whenever you have metal threads like that, you put Teflon tape on there, it's meant to like seal it shut. And it does like provide some additional friction. I think that would work, but usually what's happening is it's tearing that tape and kind of deforming it as you're closing it. So you might have to reapply that tape every time you open up the pen, which might be okay to you. I don't know. It's a very, very safe thing to do. You're not going to hurt the pen with Teflon tape. It just might be a little bit annoying to have to apply it. But if it's really that much of a problem for you and you don't want to have to deal with it, I do think that's a good option. And Teflon tape is super cheap. You probably have some around your house already, maybe, if you ever do any plumbing work. So that could work. I thought about like some kind of rubber O-ring or something. Not all pens would have the room for that. Our preppy O-rings that we have are probably too thick. I'm thinking something like a very, very thin, very small O-ring.
Come to think of it, they added O-rings to the Arrow. Did you know that?
Did I know that?
I discovered on one of the
Is it a memory if I don't remember it?
it was on one of our what's new videos. I was like, just fiddling with one of our newer ones. I'm like, oh, this is new.
There's an O-ring there.
Because I used to like spin it and be like, bzz.
Yeah.
You can't do that anymore because there's no ring there.
I'll have to go back and look through my arrows and see. Maybe I haven't gotten a new arrow.
It's a pretty recent one, yeah. So maybe that's why they did it.
It could very well be. Why else would they do it? There would be no other reason for them to do that other than to keep it from spinning off.
So to your point, O-ring's a good idea.
It is a good idea, but on most metal pens, there's not like a space for the O-ring.
Yeah.
So if you have too thick of an O-ring, it's not going to be able to get the section all the way tight to the nibby, which for some of them might be fine.
Well, if you put it on the base of the section threads, even if you, you're right.
It would have to be a pretty thin O-ring, but if you have a thin enough O-ring, it's going to like kind of mush down and you probably wouldn't notice any difference.
Yeah.
Like our preppy O-rings are probably a little too thick for that.
Well, but depends on when you stretch them, they get pretty thin.
They can. I don't know how that would do, honestly.
Preppy O-rings, we sell them. They're super cheap. They come in a pack of 4. Yeah. So, it wouldn't be a costly trial for you.
True. Or, any other O-rings that you get, pretty much any home center or plumbing, whatever, would have O-rings of all kinds of various sizes. So that might be an option as well. I was also thinking, like, is there something you can put on the threads to like add some resistance to it maybe? I've used thread locker, like a Loctite thread locker.
That blue stuff
and red stuff. The blue stuff is the more permanent.
Isn't that like glue?
It's not really like glue, but it kind of behaves a little bit like that. It's kind of like more bonding, and
it's pretty permanent, right?
I think the blue one, I get the colors mixed up. I think the blue one is the more permanent one. It's not permanent. It's not like glue. You can still break it, but the blue one is stronger than the red. So if you have one that like you need it to hold tighter, but you want to be able to undo it, that's the red one. But then you're putting this red goop, and that stuff is super liquidy. Like it gets all over everything every time I use it. I would never want to use that on a pen. So it's not really a good solution. But I was thinking, like, is there something else similar to that maybe? So in some of my research, I've never tried this, and this is very much a try at your own risk. Your mileage may vary, kind of a thing. But there's different thread sealants that you can use, like silicone-based thread sealants.
Like Plasti Dip?
It's,
again? We're talking about putting Plasti Dip on your pens again?
I don't know if Plasti Dip falls into that category.
You put it on your grips to make them more matte, and now you put them on your threads.
Maybe that would work. I don't know.
That is permanent, though.
Yeah.
Also,
not
your
really.
threads would probably just cut that right off.
Yeah, I think Plasti Dip's too thick.
Like it would stay in the recesses probably, but
I don't know.
or in the edges.
You would have to find the right type of product. But in theory, if you had some kind of like gummy type of sealant, like think about like our silicone grease, like that consistency, but instead of being a lubricant, it was more of an adhesive or sealant, I guess. Sealant would be the right word. Adhesive is wrong because you do not want to glue your threads together.
No.
You know, like with epoxy or
you do it
like
once.
That. But a thread sealant, I think, is meant to essentially be like what Teflon tape is, you know, or even like plumber's putty or something like that. You know, something that like does not have a permanent bond, but just kind of is meant to kind of goop it up a little bit.
Yeah.
But I mean, are you going to want to do that on your pens? I don't know. I'm thinking like the plumbing route, because then you're dealing with a lot of fine metal threads that you need to undo in plumbing work, but it still needs to kind of hold. So maybe there's something in that camp. I don't know. Maybe y'all have thought of something like a silicone caulk or something like that. But everything I'm thinking of is either like going to be a huge mess.
Yeah, it seems messy.
It's going to like undo the first time you do it. I don't know. This is a good question.
I say the O-ring was the best bet.
Okay. Well, then just do that. And we can just skip the rest of the question. Anyway.
Okay, do you have more to say?
No, that's it.
All right.
This is a problem I didn't even know really existed because I haven't experienced it as much, but it got me thinking quite a bit.
Well, we need to do some experiment. Get some metal pens, put in some sort of like, you know, put it on top of your tractor and see if we can just vibrate it off.
Yeah, that could work. Yeah, I'm into that.
Just next time you're driving your tractor, hold the metal pen in your hand. Just see what you can do.
I'll just be holding a bunch of metal pens.
Or just duct tape them to the side of your
saxophone on the other hand.
duct tape them to the side of the hood.
There you go. Okay, well, that's it for Q&A this week. You can ask us questions in the comments. You can also email us at pencast@gouletpens.com, and we will take those questions, and we will maybe answer them. All right, you ready to spotlight, Drew?
Yes.
The SCRIBO?
Yes.
Let's do it.
All right, let's go. What you got here, Brian?
Drew, I have perhaps the worst representation of our SCRIBO line because
so vibrant.
It's all one model and it's only two colors that are not that different from each other.
Wow.
So I apologize for that. These are just what I had for our nib nook. So this is each nib size, which is really what we wanted to feature. It would have been probably better in this video to show you the different materials and different models, but our photographer is still photographing them. We don't have all that many of them, and it's kind of a beast to pack them back up. So we're going with what we've got here.
All right.
But I think you're going to talk in the future about the pens anyway.
Certainly.
And what's new. So I've inked all of these up with the good old Noodler's Black because I need to write these for the nib nook. So I don't remember which nib is which because these two are exactly the same. But this is the fine. Okay.
Let's take a look at that nib there.
Take a look at the nib. So it's I don't know what size this nib is. It's kind of a proprietary size. I think it's like in between a number 5 and number 6.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's like a full-on number 6 size. It might be close to that length, but it's a little skinnier maybe. But anyway, this is the SCRIBO nib that you're looking at. It looks very, very similar to the Omos ones from back in the day if you hold them up next to each other. We got an ebonite feed going on there. You can see there. Can you see that it's ebonite? I don't know. Just trust me on that.
Okay.
And then this is the feel, right? So unfortunately, I'm showing you 3 different feels. But you've got your facets going on right here. It's got a little bit of a, what do you call that? Tape. It's not really a taper because it kind of bulges out a little bit.
I've heard like if it's kind of like bulbous on 2 ends with a narrow piece in the middle, I've heard that referred to as wasted. Like it has a waist.
Wasted, yeah. It is wasted when you cap it like this. Okay, wasted. That makes sense because it's like, this is like the belt. Right?
Not like, Mardi Gras wasted, but
wasted with an I in there. Not wasted like Grand Theft Auto.
Right.
Anyway, it's a good size pen. I've got big hands. So for me, I don't feel the need to post this pen at all. Can you post it? I'm pretty sure you can't.
That looks weird.
Oh, that's a weak post. I wouldn't even post it. So, but it's long enough. It's hefty enough where you don't need to do that. It is piston filler, so it's got the filler knob on the back here, which I won't do because it is inked and I'll make a mess. And then, pretty light. I don't have the measurements of it on hand, so I don't know exactly how heavy it is, but it's on the lighter side for sure, despite how big it may seem. Clip on here is just a tension clip that is not too tense. So, and
I
it's
actually like looking at the back of the clip. Look how, clips are often attached to the pen using a bar that's attached to the pen, and the clip itself is another piece. Look how far that bar goes.
Yeah.
Like normally, the actual bar that the clip is affixed to is a very short. This is actually the longest bar I've ever seen.
It's got some good space there. So if you got like thicker clothing, I think it would do pretty well in there. And then I really like the logo in the top here. That's the SCRIBO logo with the feather. It looks really nice in the top. So it's kind of this medallion that covers the whole top. And that's pretty much what you'll see in all their pens, I think. And then, it's just got some trim rings on here and stuff like that. The grip itself is faceted, which is, I don't know if everybody's going to love that.
Oh, interesting.
It's very subtle, but you do feel it.
Well, there's a lot of facets, so it's not like there are any sort of like big flat edges.
I want to say it's a 12 faceted pen, if I'm not mistaken. I think I've counted that before. So anyway, that's the feel. This is the other color, the green one. It's a little bit translucent. And it is, a little bit translucent.
Yeah. I'll say the colors aren't really coming across on the phone, so you might not want to focus on that too much.
Okay, well, I won't focus on that at all. Let's focus on the nibs because that's why we're here. So let me just make sure which one I've got here. This should be the extra fine. I think I can't even see it. Sorry, I'm taking it out of frame. Oh no, this is the medium. Okay, so this must be the 18K. Sorry, folks, you're just looking at nothing. Hey, look at this hand. Okay. Yeah, because this one doesn't say feel the flex. It just says feel the writing. Okay. This, I think, is my extra fine.
The medium, the M is going to be on the left side of the nib.
Yeah. It's hard to see, but, all of the flexible, the 14 karat ones, they have this inscription that says feel the flex. And then the nibs, and it says 14K down in there. It's just kind of hard to see. And then on the side right there, this is EF. So I've got the EF there. This is my fine, flexible, and then I've got the medium 18K. So let's go ahead and write with them.
Let's feel the flex.
Yes. Now I literally just inked these. I have not written with them at all. So you're getting like very much a raw impression kind of a thing. So the fact that it started right up is good. Because I will say sometimes when you have a brand new pen that's got an ebonite feed, it can take it a little bit to get it primed. But this is a really good sign, just like making these tiny little dots, like that's a good sign that like the ink is right there, it's ready to go. This is with very, very little pressure. It's pretty much the weight of itself, like that's a good test too, if you can see the flow. Like literally and this pen's not a very heavy pen. So like, can it write under its own weight? Yes, it can. And then if you add a little bit of pressure to it, there you go. So not flexed at all, flexed.
That's beautiful.
And I'm pressing intentionally, but I'm not pressing super hard. Like the go-to standard now for modern gold flex is probably the Magna Carta.
Mm-hmm.
It's not as soft as the Magna Carta, but it's closer to that than it is to say like a Pilot Falcon.
That's exciting.
Yeah. So if you are a fan of the Pilot Falcon, you will like this nib a lot, I think. So there you go.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Ooh, there we go.
Yeah.
I do like that.
Now, I don't practice writing a lot with flex. So when I do it, it always looks kind of weird. But because I'm like, I meant to do Goulet. That's an A. I can't do it and talk at the same time.
Right. That's understandable. Yeah, I love to write with flex. My natural approach is under the letters, so I find kind of creating.
I need like to
wide down
find my
strokes.
right angle here.
Yeah, sorry, is my phone in the way?
No, it's okay. I don't do this a lot, so I don't. Oh God, I'm so
waffles.
inconsistent.
Yes, right waffles.
Yes, waffle buckets.
Excellent.
But you can see even with an absolutely untrained hand, you can still fake a pretty decent flex.
That looks very nice.
Yeah. So that's that.
So that's the extra fine flex?
Oh yeah, I should write what it is. Okay, extra fine. Flex 14K. There. Okay. Next up, we have the Fine Flex. Okay. Oh boy, you're like turning it on me here. Okay. Oh yeah, this one's ready to go. Okay, so this is the Fine Flex. Ooh, this is wet. This is very wet.
Oh, sorry. I might have messed you up. You're not in your mic anymore.
My mic's right over here. I can turn the mic. There we go.
Didn't mean to sabotage you.
Of course you didn't. This is, writing it under its own weight, more or less. So it is darker. It is broader than what you expect of the extra fine. I will say this is like not Japanese grind standards here. This is definitely very, very solid European standard. So this is not writing with any pressure, and then when I write with pressure, it really gushes it out there.
Yeah.
You're going to need like the bright paper that can handle it. Oh, see, I'm pushing it a little bit. I need to go slower. Okay, there we go. Yeah. So you can still get a pretty good variation, which, when you get into like fine flexes, sometimes you lose some of that variation, but I don't know. To me, it seems proportional, the difference between the unflexed and the flexed.
Yeah.
It's just overall on both sides, it's broader.
Yeah.
So
I think you're +1 on both sides. +1 on the flex and then +1 on the
This is a lot.
natural.
This is a lot, man. This is a lot of ink coming out of this thing. Holy cow. I think they also do a medium and a broad too.
They do a medium
right?
flex. I don't think they do a broad flex.
If they do, then that's insane.
Maybe they do.
I don't remember. They have a lot of nib size options.
They do.
We're not carrying all of them. That is a lot.
Yeah, basically, if you see a 14K on SCRIBO, it's a flex. If you see an 18K, it's one of the standard sizes.
Exactly. Boy, in the right hands though, that would look pretty sharp. This might be a bit much for just like everyday writing in like a dot grid thing.
Well, for me, it's helpful to remember that you don't have to flex these. You could just buy them to have a very comfortable, bouncy writing experience.
Very true.
Even if flex isn't your goal, if you don't want to intentionally do that, they're still really, really comfortable to write with because of their bounce.
Yeah. And I got a heavy hand too. So I'm like, if I'm going to have a flex nib, I'm going to flex it. Okay. This is my 18K.
So that's the medium, just the kind of standard nib that we carry.
Yeah,
this is non-flex, the field of writing nib.
That's right. This is more familiar to me.
See, that medium looks not unlike the fine unflexed.
Yeah, these are very wet. These are very wet. Even the fine unflexed might be a little broader than this medium. I'm going to flex out the medium just so you see if there is any variation there. There's a tiny bit, but that's not why you're going to use this thing. I mean, it's a gold nib, so you're going to get some if you press on it, but that's not what it's for. Boy, this is smooth though, let me tell you. Awful buckets. And then
you definitely seem more natural with the medium nib there.
Oh, it's definitely more natural. I feel like I'm wearing my dad's suit trying to write with this flex. Very smooth. You can hear it just a tiny bit. I'm not sure if it picks up at all. So it's not like glassy smooth.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if you like just that little touch of grab on it, then you're gonna like that. You're gonna like that on.
But it's that way in all directions.
Yeah. Oh, it's consistent. Yeah, for sure.
Cool.
Yeah. So I think it's just not ground to be as absolutely smooth as possible.
I kind of prefer that sometimes, especially when it comes
to. It's a pretty slick paper too.
Yeah. When it comes to Italian nibs, I'd almost rather them be less smooth and more consistent.
That's what this feels like to me. Flow is still very generous. It's definitely more on the wet side of an 18 karat nib that I would think of, but it's not outside the realm. This feels more like a medium nib, like you would expect on like a Pelikan Souvron, like maybe an M600, 800, something in that vein. But overall, very, very positive experience. And I think, especially again, these are like freshly inked up nibs with ebonite. I do find that like ebonite takes a little bit of time when it's brand new to really get its flow. But even freshly inked up like this, the flow is really consistent, really good. I think it's only going to get better the longer it sits with it. So there you go. That's SCRIBO. So
Fantastic.
Just want to show you a little bit of how it writes. Very pleasing. It's not totally surprising to me because I am kind of familiar with these nibs a little bit, but it's sort of like revisiting an old friend. I haven't written with some of these in a long time. The one that's the fine flex nib, that's actually my personal pen that I've actually had for a couple of years. The other ones are totally new, so getting to know them. So I would say most people are probably going to go for the extra fine flex just because it's a little more contained.
That's what I would
than
do.
that fine flex, yeah. And then, the 18 karat medium is just a pleasant all around nib. But, there are other 18 karat nibs that are non-flex in other sizes. There's other flex sizes as well. We just didn't want to go completely nuts out of the gate with all of it, especially because there's multiple colors and models and stuff like that. But I believe that they offer all the colors. They offer both 14 and 18 karat nib offerings on basically whatever pens
Everything,
they have.
yeah.
So there are a lot of options that we may have available in the future. So
Because they're all fitted to the same, nib size. It's not like he has a model that takes different.
Exactly. That's probably helped, right? There's different finishes to the nibs, and there's different grinds, and obviously you get the 14 versus 18K. So it's still plenty of things to mix it up a little bit, but.
And again, these are all made in-house at the very small SCRIBO headquarters.
Mm-hmm.
There aren't too many Italian brands that make nibs legit in their building. This is one of the few.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd wager to say that from what I've seen thus far, they're right up there in terms of the highest quality Italian nibs on the market. They're definitely in competition. I can't say for sure if they're up at the top, but there's a case to be made.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's definitely worth checking out. Keep an eye on SCRIBO because, they are hopefully going to be around for a long time. So that's that. What are we doing next? What's happening?
What's happening?
All right, let's do it.
All right.
What is happening in your world?
I had a pretty relaxing weekend, Brian. Saturday morning, I just ran out and got some muffins for the family.
Family muffins.
I went out on my own to a bakery and brought back some muffins. Shannon was asleep, so I was just texting Archer on his watch, and letting him just respond to me via emoji. But I texted him too many times, so he just sent me a voice memo and was just like, "I gave you a thumbs up, but then you kept sending stuff, so the thumbs up that I sent you didn't come until after you had said the thing that I didn't want. So it made it look like I wanted the thing that I didn't want, but I don't. So I want the apple pie muffin, not the muffin that my thumbs up came after." I'm like, welcome to texting, buddy.
Very thorough. Yes, indeed.
I was like, thank you, Archer. That's good. It was like, it's just so funny because that crap happens all the time when you're texting people. But this was the first time it happened with him, and he was just like, "All right, Dad, listen.
The stakes are high on this.
What you did was wrong. You didn't give me time." Like,
that's right.
It was just funny.
Oh, my gosh.
So anyway, we did that, and then just kind of took it easy. We did a Target run, picked up a couple of things, and then I was at Target and I saw there's definitely, like we've talked about before, the millennials are susceptible to nostalgia. And
I don't know what you're talking about.
I think recently I didn't
recently buy a Lego Transformer
at
all.
Of course not. I think recently I read this somewhere. I don't know how true it is, but I'm not surprised if it is true that adult toy purchasers surpassed child purchasers. Not in the fact that the kids are actually using their own money, but
were you looking at the right adult toy statistic? Because that could be interpreted.
No, I mean
a couple
action
different
figures
ways.
from Target.
Children's toys being bought by adults.
Yes.
Okay. It's just good to clarify that.
Thank you, Brian. Yes, sir.
I'm willing to bet those other toys probably sell pretty well too.
I don't know what you're talking about. I'm talking about G.I. Joes, Brian. So we're talking action figures, and they're packaged in this retro packaging. The little G.I. Joes. You get the picture of the G.I. Joe doing a little action pose. The figures themselves, though. Now, we were not of the generation where the Barbie-sized G.I. Joes happened. We were of the generation where the little G.I. Joes happened.
Yeah.
So, articulation. They could bend their knees. They could bend their elbows.
Okay.
They could bend their neck. They could bend their shoulders and their thighs. And then their waists were also actuated. They had a little rubber band on a hook that they could actually they were very flexible.
Huh.
They've got these retro G.I. Joes in the store Brian.
But they're not.
No, they're
Really?
not. They're not. No knee joints, no elbow joints, no hip joints. Like, I was disgusted and appalled. I'm like, when they brought back the Ninja Turtles, and they look exactly like the old Ninja Turtles that we had.
Okay.
Same packaging and everything. The G.I. Joes, upsetting.
That's
upsetting. I'll see my boy Snake Eyes. I'm like, what have they done to you?
Mm.
What have they done to my boy? It was very exciting.
I never had G.I. Joe. I didn't have a single G.I. Joe growing up.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm not familiar. I mean, I was familiar with them.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It just wasn't. I had an older sister.
Yeah.
And so I definitely had some things that I got into, but Ninja Turtles was kind of like my action figure
for
thing.
sure.
And then Power Rangers.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't have a lot of them.
I'll tell you, if they bring back Power Rangers and they don't have that weird hand where you can move the pointer finger and then the rest of the fingers, did they do that so you couldn't do the middle finger, I guess?
Oh, I don't know.
Because there was like, they gave you the pointer finger, but then the rest moved together. I don't know.
I mean, if all those fingers could articulate individually what was going to happen.
Yeah, of course.
Of course.
But anyway, that was...
I don't know.
I got excited and then sad at the same time. But no, this Saturday we just kind of took it easy. And then Sunday morning, we were going to hang out with some friends, and they won in a raffle some sort of elite membership to Topgolf, where they got, free things and discounts and all this other stuff. And they get to invite people for free. So we're like, heck yeah, let's go.
Cool.
I think that they might be a little limited on when they can invite people. So
okay,
we were like, hey, do y'all still want to do that thing? And they're like, yep, tea time's at 9. We're like, 9 a.m. on a Sunday. Okay. So
I don't think that's weird for golf, though.
Well, this is Topgolf. This isn't actually a course. You just show up and this is like, anyway.
You're like going in off hours almost. Yeah.
I may be. Yeah. So anyway, we went there. It was free. It was great. It was hot.
At 9 a.m. was
yeah,
hot?
Even absolutely.
It was pretty hot this weekend.
Absolutely, it was. Oh, it was scorching.
And you're like swinging around a club. Like, that's not a inactive activity.
But it was still nice.
Okay.
And Archer came. Shannon went for the first time. She's never swung a golf club in her life. There's
really?
Mini golf, but she's never actually swung.
I'm trying to think. I don't know if Rachel's ever swung a driver. She's done a lot of putt kind of stuff, but I don't know. I've definitely never golfed with her. Mm-hmm. I don't know when she would have ever golfed.
Probably only if she's been to a driving range.
I don't know if she has.
Yeah. Because we did do a team thing, but she wasn't there.
She wasn't there, yeah. I'm trying to think if she ever did any team thing at a previous place she worked before Goulet Pens, but I don't think so.
I think...
I'll have to ask her.
Before this business started, Top Golf and Drive Shack didn't exist around here, so...
No.
They would only be just like the regular driving ranges at golf courses.
Which that's the only experience I had my whole growing up was like straight up driving range. You know?
I think the Top Golf concept is relatively new.
Yeah.
But anyway, that was fun.
Interesting. How did she do? How'd she like it?
She liked
first
it.
Time.
Yeah, she liked it. She just kind of did her own thing. So did Archer.
Of course.
I was like,
well, you've seen me golf before. I'm straight trash with a golf club.
You're not as terrifying as my brother Zach.
Really?
So you and Zach are similar in that you don't know how to not obliterate the ball.
I can't help it.
And he's the same way.
With bowling.
He's the same way, except the ball will either look perfect and amazing, or it will ricochet off 9 things in the immediate area, not out there where it's supposed to go. It's horrifying. Sometimes he hit the ceiling, the ground, and then the ceiling again.
Oh my gosh.
It was horrifying.
That's effort.
I'm like, you don't have to hit it that hard, bro. God.
It's definitely not a swing it harder and it goes further kind of a thing.
No.
It's just, it's not how it works.
But we got back home. We were ready to just relax because the heat just takes so much out of you. And we arrive at the house and there's a fire truck right in front of our house.
Uh-oh.
Big fire engine. The house didn't look like it was on fire. So we got out. They didn't seem like they were stressing. They were just kind of walking around, moseying. But they were wrapping up a hose. So I walk out. I'm like, hey.
Because they can come for other purposes,
Yeah. I was like, y'all doing okay? And they were like, yeah, we're the house next to you is vacant. We were just doing some hose drills or something like that. I was like, oh, great.
Hose drills.
Something about running hoses? I don't know. But so there's apparently something firefighters can do with vacant houses that I don't think they went into it.
Interesting.
But
I didn't know they did that.
I don't know. They were doing some sort of hose-related practice at that house. But I was just like, oh, that's super nice of you. And the head honcho guy looked at Archer and was like, hey, do you want to get in here and push some buttons and start the car or start the truck? And Archer usually locks up in those situations, but he was just like, yeah.
Oh my
So
gosh,
he
that's
got in
cool.
there. They let him start the vehicle. They let him toot the horn and start the siren. Like,
Oh my gosh.
like and Archer was like immediately
Because
like,
it's loud in
yeah,
there.
immediately like, why am I doing this to my neighborhood? And the other guy's like, yeah, wake up the neighbors, right? Ah! And Archer's like, oh my god, I'm so sorry.
Oh my gosh.
But it was amazing. He got to just get
that's so
he got the
cool.
royal
Oh
treatment.
my gosh, he'll remember that for the rest of his life.
That's what I said. Like,
Were you just sitting there like, oh, like
Yeah.
Archer gets to do
Oh.
it? Like, I want to do that.
yeah, no, it was fantastic. I felt so grateful. I went inside to see if I could had some like waters or something because they were all sweaty. It was so hot.
Yeah.
And I had one little bottle of water. So I brought that out. I'm like, hey, does anybody want a bottle of water?
Oh, gosh.
I only have one, but it was so pathetic. But they're
Oh,
like,
geez.
nah, we got water. I was like, okay, I'm sorry. I
I'm
don't
like,
know.
yeah, the whole truck's filled with water. We're
Yeah,
good.
I know. I was like, I wanted to do something nice because they were being so nice.
Oh, that's cool.
But just such kind people.
That's
And
fun.
yeah, but we just sat there and chatted with them for a little bit. And Archer got to, just be the main character for a little bit. So
That's cool.
yeah, it was really, really
That's
neat.
cool.
And then between all that, just kind of like running errands and stuff, we got to watch a lot of movies. Shannon
Okay.
and I had broke Death on the Nile into 2 parts. We watched them on weeknights. So we watched it a little bit on Friday night and then a little bit on Saturday night, I think. But that's the one with that's the Poirot movie with Kenneth Branagh. The detective with the mustache. He's a Belgian detective.
Yeah. Okay.
They did Murder on the Orient Express. He's an Agatha Christie character.
Yes. Okay.
So there's 3 movies. There's Murder on the Orient Express, Death on the Nile, and A Haunting in Venice. So this is the second of the 3. So
Gotcha.
we watched that. It was fine. It was probably a little forgettable. It was a standard murder mystery.
Okay.
Shannon called it like halfway through, so it wasn't like the most unpredictable thing, but it's a romp.
Yeah.
And then I by myself watched Rogue One, Star Wars movie.
Okay.
And then I watched Kong Skull Island, which is probably in terms of like monster movies that could be considered good.
Yeah.
It's up there.
Yeah.
In like the
yeah.
top 3 probably.
Yeah, I feel like I've heard of that one.
Yeah, it's solid.
More like standing on its own.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
yeah. So it's solid. It looks really cool. You've got Samuel L. Jackson, Brie Larson, Tom Hiddleston, John Goodman's in there. So it's a solid movie. So I had got that on the 4K Blu-ray. So it was my first time watching the disc since I had bought it. So that was a pleasant experience. And then we were thinking about going to see Inside Out 2.
Yeah.
But the times didn't line up. We really wanted to get an early matinee, but the golf thing kind of made that a little bit more complicated. So we just watched the first one. You had talked about how you had rewatched the first one.
Yeah.
So we're like, what? I'm sure we'll see it soon. Let's go ahead and rewatch the first one. And so we kind of had like a family movie night, which was delightful.
Very cool.
And like you,
were you a blubbering mess watching it?
there was no blubbering, but the Bing Bong thing, we all know. And so that happened. And Archer, without even looking at me, he's in front of us sitting on the floor, and Shannon and I are in the big beanbag, and he just instinctively, as soon as it happens, gets up, snuggles up between us, and gives me a hug.
He just knows it's coming.
He's like, Dad's crying. I know Dad's crying.
Well, that's sweet of him.
Yeah, no, he was terrific. But
Wow.
it's such a good movie.
Gosh,
so
that movie's so good. So good. I've
yeah.
heard really good things about the second one too.
Yeah.
I just, getting my family to the movie theater is like an effort.
Yeah.
So I don't know that it's going to happen, especially when it's like 100 degrees out and they're just like, we're not leaving the house.
I know. Yeah.
Like,
I wonder
all
if movie theaters are more or less crowded when it's that hot.
I don't know. I think you're like inside air conditioning.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But also people just don't want to go
Just don't
anywhere
want to leave the house at all.
to get there.
Yeah.
You got to get in that car.
Yeah. Fair.
That hot car.
Fair.
So apart from that, we're just getting ready for our trip next week. We're going to go visit my in-laws, Shannon's laws.
Yes. Very exciting.
So, which is, that'll be a thing. They're delightful. I've no, they're delightful people, but not sure what we're going to do.
It's more of a trip than a vacation.
Yeah. So anyway, that's coming up. There'll be a bit of a drive involved.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully that'll be fine. A lot of West Virginia driving.
Okay.
On our way to Ohio, yeah.
Yeah? Is that, I haven't driven through West Virginia, really.
It's not the best, not the worst.
It's pretty mountainous, right? Like
It's so like visually, it's less flat than a lot of states that one may have to drive through to get to their in-laws.
okay.
But as far as like good exits to, get stuff at, it's not great.
Okay.
So yeah, I've done it before. Not looking forward to it, but I'd rather be driving up and down 95. Like as far as exits go, oh, so much better. Traffic, might be complicated from time to time, but at least there are good exits.
Yes.
And
No
Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts, and this one, it's few and far between. But
you'll be like paying for a McDonald's coffee with cash because they don't take credit cards in the boonies, kind of a thing.
lots of Hardee's and Dairy Queen.
Oh yeah, Hardee's.
Those always seem to be in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah,
it's like if there's nothing here, you know what? Hardee's, plop.
That's right. But Carl's Jr. if you go far enough west, right?
Yep.
There you go.
That's it for me, though.
That's exciting, sort of. Well, first off, Kasek was right. I did look up some mood ring information. So I'll share that a little bit because I wrote it down. So basically, mood ring, it was in the 70s. So it was a ring that you wear that contains a thermochromic element or a mood stone that changes colors based on the temperature of the finger of the wearer. Finger temperature, as long as the ambient temperature is relatively constant, is significantly determined by peripheral blood flow, which is modulated by the autonomic nervous system. A mood ring contains liquid crystals that change color depending on the temperature. Here's what's going to get you excited, Drew. The idea to use thermosensitive elements in jewelry first arose from the American jeweler Marvin Wernick in 1974 after reading a magazine article about the use of liquid crystal elements in medical thermometers. It literally was inspired by the
thing we were just talking about.
Thermometers we talked about last week. Isn't that crazy? So it was directly associated.
How about that?
Same technology. It says he found a compound that changed color from black to green, blue and deep blue in the range of 32 to 38 degrees Celsius. And in January 1975, developed a technique for using it in pendants and rings. Sales began in the February of that year. Wernick called the jewelry magical. And his promotional materials claimed that the color of the pendant or ring was an indicator of the warmth of the wearer's character, which is BS. But since Wernick did not patent the invention, other jewelers adopted the idea and began to produce their thermosensitive jewelry. Soon, someone came up with a successful term, mood ring, which was adopted by all manufacturers, including Wernick. So, yeah. And then everybody started making them. They sold like crazy. And a couple of years later, they went out of fashion and a bunch of people went bankrupt because they made too many and no one wanted them anymore. But I don't know. Technology's still around, I guess. Do you really see them? I haven't really seen them. I'm sure they're around, right?
Probably.
But
on Amazon.
There you go. So it's the technology is called the thermosensitive elements. Thermocratic, thermosensitive, whatever it is. I don't know. It's not super specific.
You want to know another fun fact?
Please.
This one is about Kasek, the commenter.
Oh, okay.
When we were talking about celebrity endorsements in fountain pens, Kasek said, does a Jeopardy champ count? Because Kasek happened to be a multi-time winner of a Jeopardy. Yeah, like so at least they were on like a 3-episode tear or something like that.
I would consider that a bit of celebrity.
Absolutely.
It's more than I've been on television.
So technically, Kasek, you should have known this thing about the mood rings. Just saying.
Or you should have should have asked the question.
Leaving it to these two schmucks with our minimally.
I bet Kasek did know.
Probably.
Just wanted us to say it and do the research.
Probably.
It's like teaching someone to fish rather than giving them a fish.
Thank you.
Kasek taught us how to fish. Okay, so that was cool. Didn't know that we would research that going into this episode, but I'm glad I learned it. So for me, last week, we were off on Wednesday.
Yes, Juneteenth.
When we recorded, I did not know that we had any plans, but turns out we did, coordinated by Rachel and the kids. So we got invited by some family friends through the kids sort of a thing to go to King's Dominion.
Oh, fun.
At the water park. This was before it was 100 degrees, but it was like 90. It was still pretty hot, but we got there when the park opened and there were not that many people there, which was cool. So I got to get right onto Intimidator, or whatever it's called now. I think they're changing the name.
I thought you said you went to the water park.
Well, we did, but the water park doesn't open until noon.
Oh.
We got to the park at 11.
Okay.
So we were like making our way back to the water park.
Like, well, since we're here.
It was like, we're right here. They're running it, and there's literally no line. And yeah, sometimes that ride's not always open. So a couple of times I went last year, and it was like we either didn't have enough time because nobody else in my family wants to ride that thing.
That's a relatively short ride, right? It just basically goes up really high and goes down really fast.
No, it does a bunch of other things.
It does?
But it's, yeah. I mean, it's like
Okay.
like a minute long or 45 seconds. Well, it's like a minute long or two. So
Okay.
yeah,
It's been a while since
it's
I've been
long
there.
enough. But if the line is long, then you wait forever to get on it. But it is my favorite ride. So I like to ride it, but it's kind of intense, and no one else in the family wants to
It
ride
looks
it.
intense.
It is intense. It's known like
And
amongst-
40-year-old Brian can still handle it.
I can, but I feel it.
Okay.
No, I mean they actually had to. This is a little fun fact here. So it came out as Intimidator 305, named after Dale Earnhardt. I think the Dale Earnhardt licensing has lapsed, so they actually don't have the car there anymore.
Is there anything
changing
that
the
the
name.
licensing hasn't lapsed on at King's Dominion?
I don't know. I mean, it's been I think 14 years.
They're going to call
since they
it
opened
the
up that
Peanuts
ride.
coaster again? Like, that seems to be the only IP that they have
They
right
do
now.
have peanuts, yeah. I don't know, but whatever, it's fine. The ride is still awesome. But actually, the year that they came out with the ride, they actually had to adapt it a little bit because it was so intense. People were like, it got kind of a bad rap for people blacking out and stuff like that, which mostly it was because people were dehydrated and then they were blacking out, but it still happened some. But I don't know. I love it because it's a super intense ride.
Oh, my God.
And it's amazing.
Oh, no, thank you.
I haven't blacked out on it, but I've grayed out on it before.
What?
I believe that I rode it the first year it came out, and I almost blacked out.
Was that before they adjusted things?
Yeah, I think so. It was intense. It goes like 90 miles an hour, and it's like the G-forces are intense. Anyway, so but I love getting to ride it, and my kids didn't want to ride it, but a couple of the like other kids that we were with in this group, they wanted to ride it. So I was like, hey, I get to be like the chaperone dad that takes the kids to the intense ride, and they loved it, and I loved it.
Man.
And yeah, it was a blast. And then as we were walking back to the water park, the drop tower, which just brings you up 300 feet and drops you, that thing was not always open either. I didn't get to ride it that much last year. It was open.
You like that too?
I love it.
Oh.
I love it because it literally just drops you.
Yeah, I know.
You go like 75 miles an hour. It's just, it's amazing. I love it. Just total, just like gut, up in your throat kind of a thing. But Ellie was willing to ride it with me because I saw it there. I was like, Ellie, look at it. It's super quick. Ellie's like not super afraid of roller coasters. Like she'll hang with me sometimes. And like a couple of the other friends were doing it. I was like, Ellie, come on, just do it.
Oh, man.
And she did it. And she liked it. And, she wasn't like as crazy about it as I was, but I loved that ride. I would do it every day. Oh, wow. It's awesome. Anyway, so that was cool. So I was like, before we even got in the water park, I was
Wild,
like,
man.
I got to ride my two favorite rides. I'm good to go the rest of the day. So, totally doing the dad thing and corralling kids and all that. And it was fun, but we did the thing. Yeah. And then I rode a couple pretty intense water things. They've changed the names on some of those things too. They used to have one called the Vanish Point. So it's like a tube body water slide.
Do they call it the capless now?
I know, right? Of course, I always used to think Vanishing Point. I forget what it's called now, but basically it has a floor and you get in the tube and it just drops you down into the water slide. Then you go around.
You were describing a list of all of my least favorite.
I did those in a row.
Oh my God.
Like in pretty rapid succession. And I was like, okay, I think I'm gonna chill in the wave pool for a little bit.
Were you one of those kids that like just love being thrown by their dad like into bodies of water?
I did, but I didn't get to do it much because I was such a big kid. I remember like I used to love the like play place, type of things.
Right.
I was a really shy, timid kid when I was really young. But by the time that I really liked doing that stuff, I was too big for like all the play places and stuff. So I have this like unrequited, childhood, whatever.
So you're trying to get that back.
But yeah, I enjoy being thrown around a little bit, especially in like a roller coaster type scenario. Like they test them. I know I'm not going to get hurt.
We were at a pool.
So I'll just like let loose. And
we were at a public pool recently with like a water slide that was maybe 12 feet high. Okay. Archer was terrified to go on there. Like he eventually did, but he was not a thrill seeker. Yeah. Nor am I, but like, a roller coaster like that, like, oh, not in 1,000 years would that kid even think about that. Like we showed him some pictures of Water Country and showed him some of the tube slides there, and he's just like, no. I'm like, dude, they're closed in. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, he will eventually, but
Yeah.
no,
Joseph was like that too. He didn't want to ride like anything.
Yeah.
Last year was the first time he started to ride a couple of the like water slides, like some of the tube slides that are like up of 3 or 4 stories.
Yeah.
You know, he would do some of those and he really enjoyed them.
Yeah. I'm
as
hoping
long as
he'll
it's
get
like
there.
in a tube and not fully enclosed.
Not fully enclosed.
He does not like being in the dark in a water slide.
See, I feel the opposite. I'm like, I want to make sure that I can't just like fall off into the air. Like, I just feel like, you know,
Fair enough.
I feel like I'm gonna be like somebody from Halo where I just fall and then all my ammo just spreads out everywhere and all my grenades and I got nothing.
Yeah.
Like, ah!
I do usually have a pretty extreme experience on water slides because I'm such a heavy person.
I know.
I tend to push the boundaries.
Oh, I know.
Oh yeah, I remember doing the whatever. Okay, so
that was horrifying.
So years ago, we did a leadership retreat thing at a place in Virginia called Great Wolf Lodge. It's like an indoor water park, you know, conference meeting, whatever thing. And we did this like, I forget what it was called, but you're in a tube and there's like multiple people. It's like a big, big tube. And, you know, it brings you up and it's like this giant, like, they call it like the tornado.
It's like
or something like
one
that.
of those funnel
it's like
type
a giant
deals.
funnel. So it like drops you down and you just kind of go back and forth like this as you go down.
Mm-hmm.
Well, just the way that it happened to work out, I was facing backwards. And so I was like the first one to drop. There were like 6 of us or something in this tube?
I believe it was 4. I think it was me, you, Sam, and Christian.
Okay.
And you and Christian were on one side, and y'all are not small people.
We're not the smallest.
No.
But I tipped the scale for that whole
We were over the weight
group.
limit.
Were we really?
Slightly.
Yeah.
I think it was like
we almost flipped over.
So what happened was we went down sharply, went up the kind of cascade ramp thing that was the funnel. Yeah. And then since Brian and Christian were the ones on the back.
We were the heavy ones. We ended up at the top.
And the thing almost folded in half.
Fold over.
And if we hadn't gone down,
yeah,
they would have just like I saw a visual.
If I hadn't been holding on to the rungs there, I would have been in somebody's lap.
Yeah, like, I have a visual of Brian and Christian being folded toward me. Like it was a near death experience.
Yeah, it was pretty wild.
I was like, they're gonna crush me. I'm gonna get squished in a water slide. Yeah. But luckily we slid back down before it could actually fold in half.
Yes.
So I did make it to that evening alive.
So me, Rachel, and the other 2 parents for one of the groups of kids that we were with rode a thing exactly like that at King's Dominion. And me and the other guy, he's like close to 300 pounds.
Oh my God.
We were very much at the edge of that weight limit.
I hope you put yourselves on the opposite ends.
We did.
Okay, good call.
But I ended up being
how merciful.
I ended up being backwards again, and I got flung up again and almost bent the thing over and almost ate it again. I think that's just part of the experience for me. But it's a thrill.
Well, I guess one of the 2 of you would have more likely,
probably, yeah, because like when you're dropping like the weight, I was more likely to do that. Yeah, but I was like backwards the whole time.
Oh my God,
it was a thrill. Let me tell you, a bunch of old farts, going down in a tube together, and our kids are at the age they're like 12 and 14, and all the other preteens and teens, they're like walking around doing their thing together. So it was kind of fun. We were like at the water park, but like not really near our kids that much. And we had to like lock up our phone in lockers and stuff. And I was like, I'm off the grid right now. This is so weird.
How do you rendezvous with your kids?
It was just like, yeah, we'll just meet up, near where the stuff is, try and meet every hour or so.
Oh, okay.
It's like not a huge water park. Yeah. So like, and we all knew what each other was wearing and stuff like that. But,
cool.
They're old enough where I'm not worried about them like getting lost or anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a little bit of a free range children at the water park, which is, different phase of life that we're in here. But, enough of them in a group together, they'll figure it out. So that was fun. We did that. We all survived. Let's see here. What else? We had some more days of work. Last week was just weird with a holiday in the middle of the week. And then my parents needed some help replacing one of their AC units. So they've got like a sunroom that was like added onto their condo later. And so it didn't have the main HVAC system in it. So whoever had the place previously had like a window unit, but it was like not in a window because they have like sliding windows. So it was like down in the wall, I guess, sort of. So there's like sort of a window in the wall and the unit was in there. and it was just really noisy and they didn't really like it. So they wanted to replace it. And, I was like, okay, I can probably come over on Saturday. And then of course it's like heat index of 108.
Oh, terrible.
And I was like, oh, cool. No air conditioning. I will be replacing this unit in 108 degrees or so. But I had a fun little e-commerce experience doing it. So my parents had ordered, we did all the research and tried to find the right unit. They don't have 240 volt. They just got a regular electrical outlet. So we basically wanted like the most powerful unit you could get that you didn't have to like redo the electricity for. So they did that. They found the right unit, ordered it, got it in, everything. So we go to install the thing and I've taken the packaging out. I've taken out the old one and all that kind of stuff. Well, we go to actually like put in the new one and my mom's like, this plug isn't the same as what's in the wall. She's like, maybe we'll have to replace this outlet. And I was like, no, it's not just an outlet thing. Like they have a different plug because it's a different voltage. And
so it's like a washer dryer sort of deal.
It's not that intense, but we got sent a 240 volt unit.
So what looks different about the outlet or the plug?
So it's different in every country, but in the US at least, in a normal 120 volt outlet, you have the two slits that come down with the little ground plug at the bottom. It looks like a face. Usually with 240 volts, they will have one vertical slit and one horizontal one, and then the ground hole. There's different configurations you can have depending on the amperage and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But with like a 20 amp, 240 volt, you typically get that like winky face instead of the smiley face.
Yeah.
And the washer and dryers, you usually get like
one of them was like an L shaped, right?
More like a triangular thing. Yeah, that's for higher. That's for higher amperage.
Okay.
That's usually where you have to have like a more dedicated circuit to it. So I looked at that and I was like, this is not going to work.
So you had to pack that whole thing back up.
Mm-hmm. And now they have no air conditioner out there because they had to order it online. So I was like, okay, let's figure out what's going on. So I was like, did my parents order the wrong thing? Was the wrong thing put in the box? Was the right, so we had to diagnose a little bit. And I was like, we're in online retail. So I was like, I know every stage at which this could have broken down. Turns out what actually happened was the product listing and the product title was wrong. They had the wrong electrical things. It was like in the title, it was like, because that's a really important part of any type of appliance is knowing the electrical requirements. So I'm like, I'm willing to bet I know what happened. They probably had a template for a different product that was 120 volt and they copied it and then they didn't go back and change it when they did the new thing. So like the model number was correct, all that kind of stuff. All the rest of the information was correct. So it's like we were shipped exactly what the model number and all that kind of stuff that the website said, but all the advertising for the actual product on the product page had the incorrect electrical specifications. And I was like, Dad, you guys did nothing wrong here. They just screwed up their website. So I was like, well, that sucks.
Happens to the best of us.
It does. I was like, this is e-commerce. I know exactly how this works. Thankfully, like they're really good about returning stuff, but they had like shipped it to a store and they had to go to the store and get it. So like they had already been through some hassle.
Oh man.
And my parents, they're getting up there in their years and it's like this kind of stuff is really a hassle to them and they've wanted to use their sunroom, but it's stinking hot. So they obviously can't with this AC problem. But you know what? Sometimes things happen and you get some silver lining. So I won't get into all the details, but basically it was installed pretty jankily in there previously. So once I de-jankified the way that it had been installed previously and actually installed, because their old unit wasn't broken. They were just trying to
did they have some like pool noodles lining the thing?
They had all kinds of stuff. Like it was one of those things where you look at it and you're like, what was the logic? Like what was the progression of steps that happened for people to install it this way? They basically had like some previous unit that had been there before that they pulled out. They left the like outside metal cage part of it and just like installed the new unit within that and all that. And then like they had some extra piece of wood that was there that was keeping it from going in all the way. So then it was just like insulation was stuffed around it. And I was just like, why is this piece of wood even here? And I was like, okay. So like just the process of me having to take it all out, I was like, this is all wrong. And I removed all that stuff and I went to reinstall it and it works like 10 times better than it did before. The same unit that they already had in there.
Without any of the frame that was there?
Yeah. It was like the extra like metal shell that was around the old unit.
Right.
the new unit was like stuck inside there. So I think what was happening is it was killing the efficiency of the unit because the airflow wasn't happening properly on the back of that unit because it was basically contained inside this extra shell. And then this extra metal shell was like reverberating extra noise, which was making the unit so noisy for them. So once I actually like did research on like, okay, what unit do you guys even have now? And I looked at it and I was like, this is actually a really good unit. And it wasn't broken. It was too noisy and it wasn't up to the task. But then by reinstalling it correctly, it like solved all their problems.
So they don't need a new one now.
They didn't even need a new unit.
Silver lining.
So I was like, well, okay, Dad, this is pretty frustrating, but you can return this and save yourself hundreds of dollars. And now you have a nice sunroom that is up to temperature. And I got it just all done, taken care of that day. We went and returned the unit. They got their money back and it was done. So I was like,
fantastic.
Okay, there we go.
Fantastic.
So that was cool. Be able to help my parents out with that.
They need to fix that. Like, because in this heat during the middle of the summer, an error on an AC unit like that could be the difference between a family like suffering through a couple days versus like not. Like,
yeah. And it's like a simple mistake that can happen on a website. Like I understand exactly how that happens.
I mean, man, the heat can kill, man.
Yeah. The hardest part about all of that was like we went to the store to return the thing, and we're just going to like our local store, which is cool that they like, you get mailed something, you buy it from whatever, homedepot.com, and then you can just return it at a store. Because this is a big unit. It's like, I don't want to ship the thing back. It's really annoying. So we just brought it back to the store, and the lady helping us she was like, barely needed any information. She was like, you get your refund. And I was like, hey, I want to let you know the website and da-da-da-da, all this stuff. And she was like, I don't know anything about any of that. And she was like, I'm just here to take the stuff back. And I was like, okay, so like, it's just going to continue to be wrong and like happen to more people. And I was like, oh, that kind of sucks. So I just told my parents, I was like, maybe you guys can email them or something. I was like, I'm at capacity in being able to help in this situation, and I'm not going to go out of my way to help Home Depot with this random product that I didn't even buy. But it was just like, oh, well, okay. But like us being in retail, we know it's like we appreciate so much when people tell us about that stuff because like we don't want it to keep happening. And it's easy to make mistakes like that, especially as many SKUs as they have. I'm sure it happens.
Yeah.
A bunch of
times. When we did the Renaissance brown Pelican, like it was before we went live with it, but we had used an existing M1000 template, and usually they have ink windows. Yeah, and this one didn't. So we fixed that before we published it. But like that stuff happens, like it does. But you got to be careful. And granted, there are lower stakes with a fountain pen because you can very clearly see that it does not have an ink window. But when it comes to AC in the middle of the summer, like
that's like a more essential item.
Yeah, what if that was like the only thing they had heating their home? Like,
you would be up a creek.
Yeah, hot creek.
Yeah, but it's all taken care of now.
That's good. They're lucky to have you.
Yeah, thank you. Let's see here. What else? Right now I'm in Barry Sachs Purgatory. My order is pending and has been pending for
Purgatorio.
It has been pending for 11 days now. And I'm like,
speaking of e-commerce,
get the order? Like, can you just confirm? Like, you got it? You're working on it? Because it just says processing,
It said processing last Pencast.
I know. I know.
Come on.
I'd ordered from the same company when I bought my tenor sax, and it was like 5 days from when I ordered it to when they shipped it. And so it had been 10 days, and I was like, hey, just wondering what's going on. I saw that my payment went through.
I practiced 100 hours for this.
Got no update. I'm trying to be really patient, but I'm also very impatient at the same time. And the other order that I placed for like the mouthpiece and the reeds and the stand and all that stuff, that all came in.
So you have it all?
I've got all the accessories. I've got everything I need to play except for the horn. Oh, man. So it's going to feel so good when it comes in.
Yeah. It's like,
but it's just not here yet.
Yeah. It's like, if you're in food service ever, you're both more patient with servers, but also less patient with servers.
Yeah.
You're both like, hey, I know what they're going through. But then you're also like, I would have done this better.
Yeah, you're also like, I know what they could manage this better and not have these problems too. Yeah. Yeah. So it's a good test of patience. And I know we're off on the Pencast next week. So I'm really hoping by the one after that, I have a better update. But well, no, who knows? I'll be patient. It's okay. Life is complicated. So, yep. And then the other thing is just, this is more of a work thing, but I've been playing with thermostats and humidistats and key fobs and garage doors and just, we just have all kinds of maintenance things.
Garage doors too?
Yeah, the bay doors. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know about that.
It needs to be greased and all that. And I'm working with the landlord on it, but it's all tied into our lease renewal and all kinds of stuff that we're negotiating, and it's all in the mix. But
I didn't
Yay.
I didn't fear garage doors until you. Just so you know.
Why?
I don't know. One time you told me about like how dangerous those springs are, and
oh yeah, they're dangerous. Yeah. Yeah, they are.
This isn't the first time this has happened, Brian, where I've thought that something was kind of innocuous, and then you've been like, "Oh, those things will kill you."
They can do some serious damage. The springs in your garage for your garage door, they're under a lot of tension.
Whether
they're
or not,
heavy.
Like, you've made me afraid of overhead sprinklers.
Oh yeah,
you've made me afraid.
Should definitely be afraid of those.
You've made me afraid of garage door springs.
Garage door springs are terrifying. Yep. Yeah. What else? What else do you want to be paranoid about?
Oh, probably trees, yellow jackets. I don't know.
Oh, for sure.
Yellow
jackets are always out to get you. This time of year, they're not as bad, but later at the end of the summer, that's when they get vicious.
Yeah, well,
they start to starve and they just get really angry.
Hopefully, you don't have any more yellow jacket updates for us this year.
Oh, they're around. I see them.
Yeah,
they're around. Yep, I can see them because I crack the windows in my vehicles because it's so hot out. They fly in and then they just die on like the back of the window, and I can see like a bunch of yellow jackets, and I'm just like,
they're not a cute little teddy bear bee.
No, they look terrifying even when they're dead.
Yeah,
I'm like, you are no good, no good. Anyway, yep. So just dealing with all kinds of things in the physical realm. It's fun. Gotta love it.
Yeah, most CEOs run around and fix thermostats as a part of their normal job. I think right.
Yes.
Isn't that normal?
Yes. I mean,
the small business
with
CEO.
Small businesses, that's when you're in a small business, is when you're doing that kind of stuff. It's all good. We've mostly got our issues fixed. Until the next thing breaks.
Also, I saw you in the server room earlier. That was
the key fob stuff.
Oh, yeah. Great. All right, fun.
Yeah, that was good. That's just regular updates. Somebody's key fob broke and I had to get it replaced, and all that stuff. Of course, Sam usually helps with that, but he's out this week, so that's usually how it goes. Is like, I don't always have to take care of this kind of stuff, but when we have a bunch of people out in the summertime, which you're about to be as well, I'm sure we'll have something that'll come up and I'll be like, well, Drew's not here, so hey, Brian, can you take care of this random thing? It's all good. It's all good. It's fun. I like the diversity of tasks.
Yeah. Well, the thing is,
keeps
like,
me sharp.
As the CEO, at one point, you were probably in charge of it anyway.
Oh yeah, I had to do it all. And most of these things, like, I set it up.
Yeah.
I just don't like run it every day anymore. But like every now and then, it's nice to like get my hands dirty again, because then I have to remember, like, oh yeah, how do you do this?
And then also a lot of the things you go and do it, you're like, well, this sucks. Why are we doing it this way?
That happens a lot, actually. I'm like, boy, why are they doing it this way? This wasn't how we trained it, or this doesn't make any sense. And it's like, oh, this changed on us. Oh, well, we can fix that, replace that, and then people don't have to do that. Stuff just happens over time and it morphs over the years. But anyway, so yep, living in that realm now.
We appreciate it.
In the middle of doing Nibnooks and Pencasts and all the fun stuff. So anyway, that's pretty much it for me. I think we're pretty good to wrap it up. What do you say?
Let's do it.
All right. All right, folks, I want to thank you so much for watching. Please leave us some feedback. Let us know how we're doing. Ask us questions so we can answer it not next week, maybe the week after. Check out gouletpens.com for ink, pen, and paper needs. And I got a fun fact today. This, I feel like, is a fact that some people know. This won't be like totally new for everybody, but it might be interesting for some. So we have 4th of July coming up next week.
Yes.
So it's a 4th of July fact. So kind of interesting. So July 4th, 1776 is when the Declaration of Independence was signed in the U.S. 2 of the signatories were Thomas Jefferson and John Adams, our 3rd and 2nd president, respectively. They were lifelong sort of frenemies. So they were really friendly. And then they ended up running against each other in the election of 1800, which was just bananas how much they went against each other. I mean, I think one of them said that the other was dead. The other one claimed that they were like pedophile or something, It was just unhinged what they were going after each other. And
some things never change.
It left them estranged, but they had a strong friendship before that, but it left them estranged from each other for like 11 years. They ended up reconnecting very close to the end of their life, which is, kind of a heartwarming story. But basically, the interesting fact about this is that both of them, one of them, I think Thomas Jefferson was 86 and John Adams was 90 when they passed away. They passed away within hours of each other. John Adams was up there in Quincy, Massachusetts. Thomas Jefferson was not too far from here in Monticello. They didn't even know that each other was dying, but it happened within hours of each other, exactly 50 years after the Declaration of Independence was signed. So this was on July 4th, 1826. They both passed away after rekindling their friendship, and on the anniversary of the jubilee, if you will, of
they were writing to
the
each other
Declaration
a
of
lot.
Independence. They were writing each other back and forth a lot back then. Yep. So really just like one of those strange coincidence type of things. But, you know, kind of an interesting story between the two of them.
I think that
love and hate, you know?
I think that John Adams' last words were, or some of his last words at least, were Thomas Jefferson survives. But, you know,
he didn't.
No, I think
they didn't know that each other was dying.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
Yeah, I once purchased a 1 cent, you know, a big, they call them large cents, from 1623 or whatever, so that I had a coin from the year they died.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
1826.
1826. Yeah.
1623 would have been like Salem witch trial times.
Yeah, I have a I think I have a coin.
I've never heard of the big cent.
Yeah, I have two of them. And they're just big old hunks of copper. Like they're
How about that?
they're closer to the size of a quarter.
Wow. Interesting.
But they're pretty cool. They're nice and heavy too.
When I went to Monticello in 3rd grade, one of the things I remember buying at the gift shop was a nickel that was like this big.
Yeah.
Yep. I think it was like $5 or something like that. That, and I remember buying the candy dots that you get on the paper. That's the only thing I really remember from that trip.
I think I actually do have a coin from 1623. That's like a Spanish real that I have. So I just got the 2 days confused.
That's all good.
And I have a
That's cool too.
1764 as well, which is the year Captain Morgan was knighted, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh.
Whenever I get a coin, I like to either purchase it because it had significance in that year, or just learn a lot about
what happened during that year.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's like when it was happening.
It was fascinating.
That is cool.
So the first large cent I got was like some random year, but then when I actively purchased one, I was like, let me find a year that is significant. And I love the John Adams HBO series.
You know, I've never seen that.
It's so
I know
good.
I would love it.
That
was recorded not far from here. Like that's like literally
they shot
10 minutes from where we are right now. That's where John Adams was filmed.
They and in Williamsburg they shot a lot of scenes too. They used the actual Bruton Parish, I think it's called, the church with the interesting pulpit up there.
That's cool.
They shot there as well. One of my favorite things about that show is that everybody has horrid teeth.
Right.
Like
I remember you mentioned that before.
You know, David Morse, the guy who plays George Washington, looks like he's in constant pain every time he speaks.
Yeah, because they had horrible teeth.
Yeah.
Ugh. They were like brushing their teeth with like pumice.
Yeah, like that show has one of the, you know, there's like that and Train Spotting, I think, have some of the most vivid, uncomfortable showings of illness that I've ever seen in a TV series or movie. When John Adams is like sick in France, I just like it's uncomfortable to watch because you just feel it. Like he's just hot and sweaty and delirious, and it's just done so well that you're like, I'm starting to feel ill because of like just looking at him. Like, I don't know, we've all had these like feverish illnesses before.
Sure. Not pleasant.
When I watch that, I'm like, I can feel it again. It's done so well that it just brings it all back.
Sounds great.
And I'd love
to experience that.
That was his condition. That was his condition when they won the war.
Wow.
He was just out of it.
Jeez.
Just a mess. And they're like, hey, we won. We're good. He's like, huh? What? Yay.
Thank goodness. Yeah.
Poor dude.
Wow. That's rough. Cool. Well, that's all we got for this week. Hope this holds you over for 2 weeks. We'll catch you then. Thanks for watching, and right on.